Good evening and welcome to the Lewiston City Council meeting for Monday, August 20th, 2012. We'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. First item is the Pledge of Allegiance. I ask you to stand and join us. Will be led by Councilor Clint Daniel.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item of business is citizens' comments. This is an opportunity for citizens to address the council on agenda items or other items you wish to bring to the attention of council. You're encouraged to discuss operational issues in advance with the city manager. In consideration of others, please try to limit your remarks to 3 minutes. Are there any citizen comments this evening? Come up and state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Mark Edelblut. I live at 1730 8th Avenue here in Lewiston. And I just thought I'd come and make my annual trip down here when you guys are voting to continue to increase water rates and sewer. I've mentioned before in the past, in regards to the sewer, the situation, the fact that people who live in the orchards aren't paying an equitable amount, that you continue to jack our rates up simply because you don't have the authority to increase theirs without, you can do it through your contracts. And I don't quite understand why that hasn't been the case, why you feel compelled to continue to increase our water, or sewer and water. And now you're talking about jacking water up 5% more and using part of that money for transportation. How cost effective is this transportation thing? I mean, I see those buses running around and maybe 2 or 3 people on them. I almost wonder if it wouldn't be cheaper to hire them a taxi. But the fact that you're going to increase my water 3% to fund that transportation is, in my opinion, is criminal. I mean, where do the people in the orchards, where do they get to join in funding some of this stuff? You know, I've said before, I mean, you know, if you guys, all you want to do is waste money in this city. You go out here and you build this underpass, you build these bridges, you don't even figure that people mostly drive down to the levees to walk. They aren't going to walk down there. You chase all these grants around. You build a sidewalk out here in the middle of a wheat field behind Ziggy's, and there's no sidewalks in the orchards. And actually, a good portion of the old part of this city doesn't have sidewalks. But you're building them out in the middle of a wheat field because you got some kind of grant. You know, and somebody has to pay those taxes. You know, and the people of the city of Lewiston have to pay a portion of that. You know, it'd be nice if you guys would spend some of the money on some things that we really need instead of just throwing it after all these things that, in my opinion, are really unfounded. And now you're going to spend some more money on your canoe thing. Why don't you put those canoes in a park somewhere instead of behind the Mason Erman warehouse? You're going to paint a mural or something, at least that's what I've heard, to try to beautify it. It's never going to be beautiful there. It's behind the railroad tracks up against that warehouse wall. Why don't you put it up in Kiwanis or Hell's Gate or someplace like that where at least it'd look halfway decent? But I'm just tired of the city throwing good money after bad all the time, and then all you want to do is just jack up water and sewer and everything else and sanitation. $2 million in our sanitation fund that's you're claiming that, well, one day we're going to have to find a replacement for the Asotan landfill. Why don't you guys go out there and take a look at how big the Asotan landfill is? It won't be filled in my lifetime, at least not at the growth rate of this town. I think that we could have an earthquake and level the whole darn downtown and it wouldn't fill it. But anyway, every year it's the same old thing. You guys just want to continue to jack rates up, and people are letting their yards burn up because they can't afford water anymore. It's a question of whether they're going to buy groceries or medicine. It's just on and on. Year after year I've been coming down here, and it's been the same old thing. You know, you claim we're going to have to build a new water treatment plant. I'd like to know how many more customer or people are receiving water from that water treatment plant than they were 20 years ago. I'll bet it's very few. But yet you use these scare tactics to justify why you're going to raise water and sewer and everything else. So anyway, I just get tired of it. I think maybe it's time we had some people that could be fiscally responsible on our city council.
So we'll see your name on the next election sign-up sheet,
Well,
Mark.
I'm just saying. I mean, you guys can be fiscally responsible.
I think we are. Name and address for the record, please.
Yeah, Mike Lorenz, 458 Crestline Circle Drive. Yeah, I wanted to thank Mr. Bennett for kind of, I guess, skimming over the project, over this trinket gate a couple of meetings ago, over the souvenirs. And I guess you kind of somewhat answered part of that. I guess I never did figure out quite who authorized that money to be spent. And another thing, you mentioned that, you know, it was not for a profit venture, but according to the police report here, they said the coins and lapel pins were sold for 100% profit, and there's a nice markup on the other items. So obviously that report you gave was maybe not quite accurate. Anyway, I guess the one thing that kind of disturbed me about this whole thing, and I read through this report, and you know, one of the city council members, he said, you know, was really concerned about Sarah Stevenson, the city council member, would want to be very controlling of this money spent and tight-fisted and want to know where every bit of the money went. Well, you think that's not a bad idea? I think that's the whole trouble with the city council. You people just go out there and throw money away and I guess, thinking about what you're doing with this money. You know, it's just hard to believe somebody would, you know, want to know where every bit of the money goes. Well, you're city councilors. You should want to know where their money's spent. I'm sure you do, Brad, when at your business, you want to know where all your money's going. And as far as raising, let's see. Yeah, here we go. Oh, I just got the Citizens 2012 survey on the city. And there's some pretty interesting things in here. And, you know, hopefully we'll pay attention to some of them. You know, about 76% opposed property tax increase. That's a new one. About 52% opposed increasing franchise fees. 49% opposed increasing users fee. And 69% said public art is not a priority. So I hope you guys pay attention to the survey. And, you know, I mean, we're still paying $12,000 a year in car allowances for department heads that are making over $100,000 a year. We're spending $44,000 a year in cell phone usage. You know, how many businesses, you know, are feeling that generous in this business climate? You know, and I think that's really stuff you guys really need to take a look at. And, geez, you know, so what if we aren't furnishing cell phones or they don't get a car allowance? I mean, I don't think anybody I've seen in the city is underpaid by any stretch of the imagination. So I think it would behoove you, council people, to, you know, just, you know, take care of the taxpayers for once. That's all it takes. Thank you.
Jim Kless, 520 21st Avenue, Lewiston. I really wasn't planning on being here tonight, but I came last week and asked a few questions, addressed a couple of issues, and I was naive, I guess. I thought that perhaps at a meeting about the city budget, a public hearing, that there would have actually been some discussion about the budget at the public hearing, but that's my mistake, and I apologize for that. So tonight I'm back to address the same issues, and maybe tonight there'll be some discussion on the issues, and I guess I'll start right at the top.
on page 46 of the Citizen Guide to the Budget, or excuse me, on page, we'll start on page 31, talks about property tax levies and rates. And for the 4 people that watch this on TV and the handful here, I apologize for the repetition, but since none of these issues were addressed last week, we'll do it again. In fiscal year in 2012, the net value of property in the city of Lewiston is down to its lowest level since prior to 2008. So property value is going down, and in most people's lives, that means their net worth in their life has gone down. But the city budget in terms of what's collected in property tax has gone up approximately 10%. So net value of property is down, and yet the city is going to extract more money of people's less net worth. And so tonight, perhaps, if there's going to be any discussion of the budget, I'd like to know what each of the 7 councilors, what their beliefs are on extracting more money, more literal money out of people's less net worth. And I think they owe it to the citizens to tell them, each and every one individually here. This is very central to how we operate a city. And apparently, at least according to the proposed budget, although citizens suffer, the city is supposed to continue to go on unscathed and advance forward. And I guess we are owed an explanation of that. So I'd appreciate that. Into some of the details, I noticed that Community Park is going to have close to $850,000 of capital improvements done to it this year. And it says funding is from taxes, reserves, and wastewater fund. Now, City Park is a fine idea, and we spent money on it, and I'm not saying it shouldn't, over time, continue to go forward. But in times where people have struggled, and a lot of people have less income, and their home values are down, I believe that's a year we could skip improvements to Community Park. That alone would solve budget issues. That alone, by itself. This discussion can be short. You can do everything else, and you don't have to raise property taxes on people. Now, supposedly, we have a partnership in Community Park, and I asked last week, I tried to be polite and defer so that the council could explain the nature of the partnership. No one did. So I'll explain the nature of the partnership. This was sold, Community Park was sold to the citizens of Lewiston on the idea that it was a partnership between the city, LCSC, and the Lewiston School District. In the detail, however, is the fact that if one of the entities chooses to make some infrastructure upgrades and capital improvements to the property, the other 2 partners are not liable to pay that money back up until the time they themselves start to invest into the property. Well, currently, essentially, most of the investment has been done by the city of Lewiston. LCSC, as we speak, has no interest in that property. Perhaps one day that'll change. So if the city of Lewiston puts $850,000 this upcoming fiscal year into Community Park, we alone, not our partners, are responsible for that up until the time that they choose to do something. Now, if we have such good partners, and this is a true partnership, perhaps our partners should do that investment. It's necessary for everybody. Let them lead the way, and we'll pay them back when we choose to do the next improvement on our part. I'm not sure that's really come forward very well to people in here. And again, I tried to leave this alone so the council could address it. They chose not to. That's a big hole in this budget this year. Yes, there are some reserves that have been put aside for Community Park. And if they want to spend those, that's fine, but the taxes can be left out of it. And they're continuing to pump a couple $100,000 a year just into the reserve fund of Community Park could certainly stop. And it's within this group of 7, it's within your decision to do that tonight. This is the time and place. There is no other time and place, no other time of the year. This is budget time. So I'd like to see if anybody will address that tonight. Perhaps they won't, but it'd be nice if they did. I asked last week to have a total compensation figure made available, not just wages, not what's called base wages, but wages, total benefit, the total compensation package for the city of Lewiston. And I asked for fiscal 2011, which is in the books, 2012, which we're currently in, and just about done. I know it'd be a little bit of a guess, but we're mostly through it, so it's be pretty close. And then what the budget is for 2013. It really isn't explained in this book. Now, if base wages or total compensation and everything, that's fine, but let's see what's going on with wages here in this town. In a community where most people are working on flat wages or decreases or have lost their jobs, the idea that we continue to march forward with increases when everybody else is struggling, I think is very difficult for the citizens at large, to handle. So I'd like to see some addressing of that issue. It was already referenced tonight about the citizen survey that came out today. 76% of the people do not want property tax increases. The city council, your obligation is to the citizens and taxpayers of Lewiston. It is not to the business of the city of Lewiston. That's the byproduct. Your obligation is to fulfill what the citizens of Lewiston want. And according to your own survey today, 76%, that is not a little bit of a majority, that is a way super majority, do not want their property taxes increased. I hope you hear not only what I am just repeating, but what's in your own guide that you asked to have done. If you want to go against the will of people, that's your decision, but you will all be held accountable for that. This idea, it's interesting, this idea of collecting fees in water and sewer enterprise funds, not only for some increase for the needs of those two enterprise funds, but the idea that we're going to take much of that increase and turn it back into improvements on roads. The interesting thing is how publicly this is done. Now, perhaps technically, by the letter of the law, it's legal to take reserve funds and various enterprise funds and use them for whatever you want. Well, I guess we'll find out about that later after the fall elections, after maybe the court rules on it, whatever happens. But to be so blatantly open that we are going to increase rates on certain enterprise funds and then divert their uses is so far against the spirit of what those enterprise funds exist for. It's just phenomenal. A comment was made, I believe by Mark Edelblue, just the word criminal came up. And in the criminal world, well, I'll back up before I say that. If you're going to raise these funds and you're determined to do it, and openly, blatantly, it should actually go to sanitation, because just as was stated, much of the city of Lewiston does not pay the city of Lewiston water rates or sewer rates, because there's Lloyd for water, there's the other sewer districts, so this wouldn't impact them. If the city of Lewiston is determined to raise the enterprise funds rate and divert it into other uses, you should at least be an equal opportunity mugger and allow all the citizens to enjoy being a victim of the mugging. In the criminal world, they talk about laundering money. Well, if we take it to sanitation, well, that's sanitizing. So laundering, sanitizing, it's all cleaning. Let's clean up the dirty money we're going to collect. And there's no other way to look at it, and you're so blatantly open about it, it's just phenomenal. I don't mean to be harsh, but last week I brought up some issues. None of them were addressed at the public hearing of this very subject. It was buried, and of course the public hearing for the budget was buried deep inside an incredibly large agenda. It was not addressed till almost 7:45 p.m. last week. The meeting didn't get over till about 9:30. Most of the items on that budget, agenda items, were not time sensitive. They could easily have been put back another couple of weeks. And I think that's terrible, to take the one opportunity at a public hearing and bury the most important thing you people do, which is the budget, and bury it deep in other stuff. I think it's embarrassing. I think you all should be ashamed of yourself for that. Tonight's a little cleaner. But I fully expect the issues I brought up, which I believe are very legitimate issues, and I can speak of with some evidence because I was one of you at one time. So I do have some background on what I speak. And I believe these are all legitimate issues that you owe it to the citizens of Lewiston to explain, especially extracting more money out of their less worth. Thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Daniel.
Did we by any chance get that information on the wages? Full?
Yes.
We did.
The original figure that's posted in the Citizens Guide to the Budget has the base wage figure at $14 million. The actual total number with all benefits, overtime, all wages computed for temporary and full-time personnel is a little over $23 million. As a percentage of the expenditures of the budget, that's slightly less than 40%. Another 14% makes up our capital project budget, and then the remainder, the largest share of the budget, is 46%, which is the M&O, or materials and operations, for the operations of each of the departments.
I think an appropriate time would be when we're discussing the issue at hand, when we have a motion on the floor.
We still have citizen comments.
Yes, we still have citizens' comments. Are there any other citizens' comments this evening? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Request item D be moved to active agenda H, and item E be moved to active agenda I. Does the council wish to pull any other items to the active agenda?
I'm sorry, Mayor, was that item D and E?
D is in Delta, and E is in Echo. Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to read the consent agenda as amended.
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to read the consent agenda as amended. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries 7-0.
Approving the minutes of the July 9th, 2012 regular meeting, the August 6th, 2012 special meeting, and the August 6th, 2012 work session. Accepting the minutes of the July 5th, 2012 and the July 19th, 2012 Historic Preservation Commission. Approving the second reading of Ordinance 4587 by title only. An ordinance of the City of Lewiston amending Lewiston City Code Section 37-3 by adding the definition of feedlot. Amending Lewiston City Code Section 37-196 by removing the definition of feedlot and providing an effective date. Approving the first reading of Ordinance 4579 by title only. An ordinance of the City of Lewiston, Municipal Corporation of the State of Idaho, establishing floodplain management, providing definitions, providing for permit processing, and the authority of the administrator, providing floodway construction standards, providing variance and appeal processes, providing for penalties, and providing an effective date. Approving Resolution 2012-28 by title only. A resolution accepting and approving a dedication of right-of-way from Sea Point LLC, an Idaho Limited Liability Company, to the City of Lewiston, and providing an effective date. Approving Resolution 2012-40 by title only. A resolution approving a development agreement between the City of Lewiston and Idaho Municipal Corporation and Robert L. Brooks and Robin Brooks, husband and wife, to permit new residential construction at 1723 Burl Avenue, Lewiston, Idaho. Authorizing and directing the mayor and city clerk to execute and attest respectively said agreement and providing an effective date. And approving the vouchers payable for July 10th through July 18th, 2012 in the amount of $6,488.48 and July 19th through August 1st, 2012 in the amount of $1,007,300.18, and this excludes payments to Han Rental and Han Supply.
Okay, the consent agenda has been read. I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as read.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the consent agenda as read.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda as read. Is there any discussion from council? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries 7-0. Move on to the active agenda. The first item of business is Ordinance 4582, the second reading. I'll entertain a motion to read Ordinance 4582 for the second time.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we read Ordinance 4582 for the second time.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to read ordinance 4582 for the second time. Is there any discussion by council? Hearing none, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries 7-0.
Approving the second reading of ordinance 4582 by title only. An ordinance enacting a new article and sections to be codified as Lewiston City Code, sections 29-25 and 29-26, and Article 3 of Chapter 29 titled Fees. Establishing a fee for taking and providing fingerprints by the Lewiston Police Department. Providing that all future fingerprinting fees will be established by resolution of the City Council and providing an effective date.
Okay, next item of business is ordinance 4583, potential second reading, enacting new ambulance service fees. I'll entertain a motion to read 4583 for the second time.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded to read ordinance 4583 for the second time. Is there any discussion by council? Hearing none, those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries 7-0.
Approving the second reading of ordinance 4583 by title only. An ordinance repealing Lewiston City Code Section 7-1, enacting a new Lewiston City Code Section 7-1, setting ambulance service fees and providing an effective date.
Okay, next item of business is reading ordinance 4585 for the second time, and amending ordinance for the annual appropriation and adjusting for this fiscal year. I'll entertain a motion to read ordinance 4585 for the second time.
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to read ordinance 4585 for the second time. Is there any discussion by council? Hearing none, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries 7-0.
Approving the second reading of ordinance 4585 by title only. An ordinance of the City of Lewiston, Idaho, amending ordinance number 4563, the annual appropriation ordinance for the fiscal year beginning October 1, 2011 and ending September 30th, 2012. Appropriating additional monies that are to be received by the City of Lewiston, Idaho in the sum of $6,748,690 and providing an effective date.
Okay. Next item of business is second reading of ordinance 4584, the annual appropriation ordinance commencing on October 1st, 2012 and ending on September 30th, 2013. I'll entertain a motion to read ordinance 4584 for the second time.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we read 4584 for the second time.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to read ordinance 4584 for the second time. Is there any discussion by council? Councilor Daniel?
Just want some of the questions that former Councilor Klust had asked. Can you describe the partnership about Community Park? Did he describe it accurately, or?
Yes, he did describe it accurately.
Okay.
It's a three-party agreement that's been in place for about 8 years. Concurrent with the purchase of the property, it's 3 separate parcels of land, one owned by LCSC, one owned by the Lewiston School District, and one owned by the City of Lewiston, on which we're developing the community park. So the issue is the infrastructure largely, because the actual development of the park facilities it's a city facility. But when it comes to infrastructure, the total estimated infrastructure costs for the site, which includes the interior streets, exterior streets, water, sewer, sidewalks, etc., is about $10 million. The split on that is about 30% city, and the remainder is about 35% each between the high school and the college. The issue most recently, though, is that LCSC, as Mr. Klust said, has determined that they are not going to develop that property, at least at this point, and potentially that property would be sold to a third party. Potentially it could be to one of the other partners, or it could be to just a third party who has a different idea for development of the property. And whoever that might be, it would be incumbent upon them to provide their share of the cost of the infrastructure to serve the property. At this point, we have water to the property. We have some of the road system in place for the property. And the city itself has developed the park portion of the overall site with a walking path, with And we also have plans in store to perhaps work with the high school on a cross-country program that could be done on that park site there. We are proposing this year in the current budget to move forward with the remaining major sewer line that needs to be constructed to provide wastewater service and sewage to the property. Then there are a couple of fairly significant street projects that need to be constructed still as well in order to provide the basic bones that's necessary in order for future development to occur on the site. So at this point, the costs have largely been split between the city and the school district for the development of the infrastructure that's been constructed to date. But as I said, eventually that will be recovered for the college property at such time as that's developed. So I think Mr. Kluss's point was, should the city be developing it up front, or should the partners be developing it up front? I think that's a legitimate question, but it's not for me to say.
Mr. Bennett, did I hear you say that it's the cost so far with infrastructure as far as that road, I think it's park that's been put in, has been split between the city and the school district?
Well,
Did the school district put any funds in for that road that has been built up there so far? I believe they put in a chunk of change on that, didn't they?
Yeah. I don't know the exact dollar amounts.
Any recall? Give me a dollar figure. There's something close, guys. 70, 80,000? I'm sorry?
Okay. Our estimate is close to $200,000.
So the school district has put in close to $200,000 on the project so far.
That's our estimate,
as far as the
yes.
infrastructure that's already been put in. So
Correct.
it hasn't been footed just by the city of Lewiston.
It is not.
Okay.
I think also, I think Mr. Barker hasn't business along that corridor chipped in some money for that project, Potlatch Credit Union.
Potlatch Credit Union, I think
$100,000,
wasn't it, Dan? That they put in for
over 2 years or 3 years.
over a 2-year period of time?
But this is for the city park portion, yes.
Right.
Okay.
But it helped to develop that walking path and so forth.
Correct.
Potlatch Federal
Right.
One Credit Union also has contributed money to that. Okay, thank you.
They provided all of the local match for that. And the city funds as well.
Okay,
Then
so
Mr.
we heard-
Barker was saying that the Potlatch had put in all the local match for that project, so the rest of the money came from the grant that was received to develop it, so there weren't any actual city dollars that were put into that project.
Okay, no city dollars into that project at all,
Correct.
as far as the walking paths.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Bennett, on the current budget for community park, how much of those funds are federal grant monies?
Virtually all of it.
Okay.
And we cut the property tax allocation for community park again this year. That would be the second year we did not use any of the property tax allocation for community park. So any funds that are spent, to develop the park site itself are coming from either grant dollars that we have received, in-kind match, or other kinds of matches that we receive from the community.
And a little over 100,000 reserves.
Correct, and we do have capital reserves for that site. Mr. Marsh informed me of about $100,000.
So any additional, so currently right now, that specific capital project that isn't increasing the amount of property tax that we're asking for, that's carrying in itself. And it's
Right,
something
it's not
that's been planned.
connected to any
Okay.
of the general fund property taxes.
Mr. Mayor, because the $100,000 that was allocated for that has been taken out of this year's budget, right?
Yes, for the second year.
For the second year in a row. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Councilor Kleber?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm sorry, but, I know Mr. Barker hasn't been the head of the department for very long, but we do have the longtime CFO of the city, and the city manager hasn't been involved in this all that long. But I'm going to tell you right now, I don't recall the school district kicking in a dime for the Park Avenue extension, which turns into 11th Street. In fact, we got in trouble over that project because of the Association of General Contractors, courtesy of several of the big contractors here in town, were wondering why the city was building that street and they didn't put it out to bid. Okay? So to my understanding, we paid for that, which was to the benefit of the other two partners. So let's get this is going to be perfectly clear here. The Potlatch Federal Credit Union grant was strictly for the walking path,
Right.
which adjoins
That's what
their
we said.
property. We were also talking about the street. So we have been the sole partner to date on developing this stuff. And I agree, the fact that, and that was part of my email that I sent to everybody today. I'm sorry it was late, but the fact of the matter is we've been the sole partner. And I have not heard a whopping compelling reason for us to continue with the sewer project right now because it is not needed at this time. Yes, it is the bones that is going to help develop the project, but we can certainly make it another year without a $596,600,000 sewer line. I mean, I don't know why we're having this discussion. We could put this off for a year. It'll solve a lot of budgetary problems. Now, people are saying this is mostly grant funding. The funding, first item says taxes, then reserves, then wastewater fund. So maybe somebody can enlighten me to the amount of grant money that we have coming into this sewer project, like specific dollar amounts.
Well, remember, that's a proposed project. We were talking about
It's budgeted for this
where
year,
we are
sir.
currently. And if the council wants to delay that project, you can certainly do that. However, that's a wastewater project. It doesn't have any connection to property taxes or to the city's general fund and tax allocation. It's a wastewater project for a sewage project. That's what it is. So, and as far as the other issue about the contribution from the high school, why don't you let us research that? I mean, you asked us to respond to you off the cuff. We've done that, but I certainly don't dispute your recollection of it, Counselor. If that's correct, let us get you the actual numbers so we can bring that back to you so you know what the facts are. Because I don't want to misspeak, but we're giving you the best we can, at the spur of the moment.
Okay, I guess my comment would be that when this is the Citizen's Guide to the Budget, and when the first item for funding says taxes, I don't think people look at that as saying, well, this is a wastewater project, that it's coming out of the wastewater fund. Okay, I look at it as taxes, then reserves, then wastewater fund. The other three trail improvements, I don't know if I have a big problem with that. I don't think that's a huge issue, but $600,000 is, and if that's just enterprise funds, then that's a whole different deal. But the way it appears to me that this is tax, the general tax money that's going in to fund this thing.
Mr. Bennett, I think it'd be good information for the council to have on any grants and the timeliness of those, if they can be deferred for a year or if it's something that needs to be addressed this year and what the impacts would be if we decide to take a pass on any of these projects.
Yeah, I don't believe that any grants were anticipated to pay for the sewer line project.
Okay.
I think it was just simply going to be an enterprise fund sewer project, like so many that we schedule and budget every year.
Okay.
The Citizens Guide may refer to other methods of revenue, but virtually every project in there says the same thing. So, I mean, that could very well be just an oversight to put that in there because the funding is not intended to indicate that any of the money that would be for a sewer project would be coming out of property taxes.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Randall, you had a question. You're good. Councilor Daniel.
With the council's indulgence, since former Councilor Kless obviously got us in this conversation, he apparently wants to say something. Would it be okay if he made a comment? I know often we have done that before. We've allowed the public to.
I think at this time he's had his chance to speak for citizen comments, and if he's got some other questions he needs, if he could put it in writing and give it to staff or council, I think that would be more appropriate. Councilor Daniel.
I would ask that you recognize former Councilor Kless, or I would ask former Councilor Kless to write something down in writing, and I'll just say it out loud.
Be appropriate. Is there any other discussion on ordinance 4584?
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
may I?
Yeah.
I don't know if this will help or not, Councilor Kleberg, but a couple things. I do have the revenue details for the community park project, and it does include a transfer from the wastewater fund because it's the wastewater is involved, and there's a grant, both a state and a federal grant. The state grant is the transfer is $268,000. The state grant portion is 108, and I'm rounding. Federal grant of 328,000, and a use of reserves of cash forward reserves of 138,000. The point about taxes, that's addressing that entire collage, that whole section of projects. So it's not just the one piece, the one project, community park. It includes all four of those above. Now that being said, the only taxes that are really, there is no taxes this year allocated for any of those projects. But the reserves, the carryover reserves that I mentioned, 138,000, though, I mean, it's easy to say that, or it's probably fair to say that a lot of the reason why there is reserves was because of previous property taxes. So previous year's property taxes that were allocated to the park's capital certainly are involved. So that's why you see the word taxes with that. But and then that's the breakdown for the revenue.
And the overall cost of the project?
There's two projects, correct? Yeah, we've got the sewer line project. It's detailed on page 46, but the sewer line portion is 596,000. Park trail improvements, 150,000, and then just parkland development, 100,000.
Councilor Kleber.
So it would be safe to say that the community park land development, that is coming out of the general fund? The last item? Where's that coming from? The 100,000?
That would come from the capital projects fund, the recreation, parks and recreation portion, so.
Yeah, but that's the 100,000 that we cut out of the budget. That's the $100,000 that is not being funded this year.
Okay.
Right.
Uh,
Because it's in there because it was proposed that way. And then after it was proposed, as part of our budget balancing project to eliminate the overall deficit in the general fund of about $700,000, that was taken out.
But it's still in this manual.
Still in the manual.
Any other counselor? Councilor Kleber.
Thank you. Several. I don't know if I've got quite the answer I was looking for on this, but that's fine. Other comments, I did send an email out. It was late, I'm sorry, I was on vacation last week. The other questions that I had, we had that 106,000 in unscheduled funds for water. I'm assuming that's some sort of contingency. I would assume we already have some sort of a contingency fund. So this is over and above what we might have on hand.
Councilor, the funds you refer to in the water fund reserve are for, well, a good example is well number 6, which has gone down 2 or 3 times in the last year or so. They're for unanticipated water capital expenditures that may come up during the year. Well 6 is down again now, and we'll have to go under an extensive overhaul to put it back into service again. So that's typically what that line item is for those kinds of unidentified water projects that may need to be completed during the year.
But we do have an existing reserve fund for water, correct? That's fairly healthy. Well, I don't know what healthy is financially, but we have a couple million in water in reserve.
We do, but it's kind of like having a reserve fund and a contingency. You put the contingency in your regular department budget because it's easier to use it than to have to go back and amend the budget and to take it out of reserves if you need it. So, you know, the council has a contingency fund. Each of the enterprise funds has a fund, if not called a contingency fund, an internal reserve, if you will, that you can put money into and budget it for the year for unexpected emergencies or projects that need to be done without having to go back and take it out of the actual reserve account for the department, which hasn't been budgeted for.
But 106,000 wouldn't have a huge impact on the reserve fund that we have, if they needed, say, 106,000.
I would think it would not, no.
Okay. The other comment I had was, if we're going to go down this list, we're looking for cost savings. The wastewater, the TV truck. Is it? I mean, I know it's budgeted for replacement at 250,000. How critical is it? Is the machine going to blow up on the side of the road while it's trying to scope a sewer line?
I can't.
No, it's you know, this is a legitimate question.
I can go up to the podium. It's easier.
You might want to stick around up there, Chris.
Councilor Mayers, the issue is, I mean, certainly it's scheduled and we can certainly not do it this year. Eventually it'll have to be replaced. I can't guarantee that, tomorrow it's going to blow up. It's scheduled and there's a reason for scheduling it. So that's the best answer I can give you. Tomorrow I can't tell you that it's going to blow up and we need it. But if it doesn't, if this budget year it does blow up and we don't have it, we certainly can't do our job in the wastewater system.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, I guess the next question going down my list is, same question for Chief DeYoung on the new ambulance. I mean, if these are critical things, I guess they need to be explained, but I'm not seeing critical things at this time, so.
Mr. Mayor, councilors, same type of atmosphere exists. It's budgeted for. We've started the remount process in an effort to save funds for the city rather than purchasing brand new ambulances. Could we certainly delay this for a year? We probably could. The service center does a great job in our preventive maintenance. Realize with each, not just with emergency services, but with each delay, then there'll be that trickle-down effect, which is what we're trying to avoid. Is it mission critical? It's very important. Will we get by if we don't have that this year? Yes, we will. Just today, earlier, we had 5 ambulances on the road at one time. So it's important for us to make sure that our ambulances are sturdy vehicles, that we can rely on them. But we'll certainly make do if we need to.
Okay.
Councilor Randall?
Something our citizen survey brought to our attention too was the fact that we had a high participation rate of people over 55, and that ambulance is going to become even more important.
Okay. Councilor Daniel.
I'm going to change the subject a little bit. I'm still on the budget though. I noticed when I was going through each department, there's an allocation for a lot of overtime. And I was wondering if there's any kind of thing in place going forward to have a little stricter controls on it.
Well, each department has an overtime budget. Some departments, for example, such as police and fire, use it far more heavily than other departments do. And the Public Works Department, of course, has probably a fairly significant overtime budget for after-hours emergencies where the crews have to be called out to fix a water line or whatever. Each department manages that, and we try to keep on top of that to limit overtime to the greatest extent we can. I think in some instances, such as the fire department, it's more difficult objective to achieve because of the full complement crews that we have to send out whenever we have a fire or an emergency medical call. But we have talked about this project, not this project, but this issue in detail this year because overtime is a significant addition to the overall personnel cost that the city has to operate. I can't tell you that there's any magic bullet out there to do that, other than each department is looking at ways to put themselves in a better position so that they don't have to use overtime as often. I think that's about the best answer I can give you right now.
Any more? Keep going.
Car allowances. Can you explain that? I guess I understand there's always a trade-off. If you don't have the car allowance, then you're paying mileage. From what I'm seeing, it's about $2,400. So what's the justification for that versus paying mileage or somebody just using a city vehicle instead?
Well, quite honestly, I think that's a discussion for the council to have. I mean, that decision was made that they thought it was appropriate to pay a car allowance to some personnel because of the nature of the work that they do and their need to be on call whenever they need to be there for either an emergency or outside of normal working hours or to attend meetings outside of the area, that type of thing. But, quite honestly, the last city I worked at dealt with that same issue and said, we don't want car allowances, so we'll put it into salary instead, just so you don't have to have anyone asking you about car allowances. So, but that becomes a political issue or a policy decision by the council as to how you want to handle that. The reason for having a car allowance is still there. It's to compensate employees for the need for them to be flexible and be available to do city business whenever and wherever it's needed by the council.
Any other questions from council? Councilor Ortman.
We've had good questions tonight, and I thank the people who continue to ask us to ask the questions, because I think we need to do that. There have been a number of them over the 10 weeks that have surfaced, and we have actually addressed some of the issues that were brought forward to us. We have tonight and we have next week that we'll be looking at a number of these issues and be talking about them. There are some community program issues that I would like to talk about. I said last week that I would propose not taking the 1% cut on in a number of areas, and that would amount to a total of $1,550. Essentially, feel that is important, and I will put forth an amendment to do that, but I want us to be able to discuss that before. I'm specifically referring to the Valley Boys and Girls Club, a $150 cut. That $150 cut is a lot of cheese sandwiches. I don't know, I spend some time up there making them, and when I look at the kids we're serving, I don't think we're misusing city money at all.
Councilor Ortman?
You want to do that in the other section?
Yeah, no, you could do it here. I guess just do it as amendment, a motion to amend. And I guess.
Do you want the amendment before a discussion?
Yes.
Well, shouldn't that be done under 4586?
We haven't read it, so we should be done in the next section.
Next section,
read it.
okay.
Annual appropriation.
Right. So, in terms of reading it, yes, I'm in favor of reading it, and I will have some amendments that will bring forth.
Councilor Stevenson.
Thank you. And I wanted to thank the people who came this evening and who have emailed and contacted the councilors or the city. I don't support reading this ordinance because I don't support the budget. Our expenses exceed our revenues, and the answer that has been implemented is to raise property taxes, and I don't support that. And I think we've been asked in previous years to come up with a list of examples of things that we think should be trimmed or something like that, and that wasn't, I didn't think that was very successful. So my response is that I believe our task is to say that we think the budget is exceeds what we're looking for, and it's the staff's and the city manager's task to come up with a more balanced budget that doesn't require tax increases. And so I'm not going to propose specific items, but I suggest that the staff and the city manager bring it more into line so that it can be accomplished without any property tax increase, that there's plenty of room in this budget for inspection.
Councilor Kleber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, we've been down this road before, and we do have bright people working for us. And I know they've done a good job trying to sharpen their pencil, and they've pared out about $700,000. But obviously, it's not enough in a lot of people's eyes. Because the way I look at it, we're probably about 300 and something thousand short. If we're going to go with a 2% property tax increase, I made 3 proposals tonight that would trim $476,000 out of this year's budget. We can still have the stuff that was desired at the 2% property tax increase without raising anybody's property taxes.
Sure. Councilor Daniel.
I agree with Councilor Stevenson, and I especially agree with Councilor Kleberg. And he actually made a lot of good points, especially with his experience. It probably made it a lot easier for him to come up with the ideas, and I commend him for actually being able to come up with those. But I did want to make a comment before the vote. You know, groceries are more expensive. Beef prices are expected to go through the roof next year. Corn prices are up. Gas prices are up. Health insurance is up. You know, how can, you know, when are we going to recognize that there are people struggling out there? 2%, you know, may not be a lot for anybody up here on the council, but I guarantee you it affects many people here in the city that may be really close to losing their homes or choosing between paying their property taxes and food on the table. So just ask the councilors consider that.
Mr. Mayor.
Pro Tem Cannon.
And I also appreciate everybody's comments tonight. You know, when we start this process, we go through a lot of material. And we as councilors sit and decide on what's going to be best for our citizens, whether it be infrastructure, whether it be services, or whatever that is. And that's why we sit there in 10 of those budget meetings for, is try to determine what's best for our citizens. Nobody wants a property tax increase. Of course we don't. I don't, you don't, these people out here don't. But the fact is that as costs continue to rise within our own city, as they continue to rise within our own household, the city doesn't go away either. We still have to balance that a little bit. We cut $3 million out of this budget last year. Was it last year, Mr. Marsh, 2 years ago? We took a 0 property tax at that point, didn't we, increase? Yes. Last year we took a 2.5%?
Yes. Yes, that's correct.
So 2 years ago we took a 0 property tax increase. Last year we took a 2.5%. This year we're going to negotiate from 2% down, however that's going to end up. But some of the comments tonight were, we don't take this very seriously. And we're thieves and stuff like that I heard tonight. It's criminal what we're doing. Is it really? Is it really criminal what we're doing? We're trying to get the best possible services for our citizens. And you know, that does cost a little bit of money. Now, we had a $750,000 shortfall this year, which you took out. Didn't raise anybody's property taxes, but we got money out. So if you look over the last couple of years, we've cut close to $4 million out of this budget. Right? Mr. Marsh?
Correct.
Is that a fact? That is a fact. Cut $4 million out of this budget. That's what? 5%? 8%? Okay. So we are very cognizant on what goes on in this city. Anybody can review the financials of the city. Anybody in the city can review the financials. We're not holding anything back. It's right out there in the open, out there in the public. You can go view anything you want to view. You can talk to any department manager you want to talk to. But the fact of the matter is, we still have to run this city. Now, you want to cut some more? Okay, let's cut some more. Give them the ideas on what we're going to cut. I don't think it's fair that we sat through 10 meetings and listened to these department managers on what they need
to continue to do the job they need to do for the services of the community, for us to say, just go cut it. Come up with the ideas and cut it. We have in the program right here tonight for the things that we pay for Valley Vision and those type of things. A lot of people think that what we get for TV here is free. We pay $26,000, $10 a year to have this televised. Do we need that? Do we? We can cut it. Pretty easy thing to cut. We'll go back to City Hall, have our meetings. If we're going to cut, let's look at all avenues of what we need to cut. So $26,000 can generate a little bit more for somebody else. But I think it's important for us as counselors, as we went through this process, to say, okay, what are we going to cut, and what department are we going to cut, and we're going to let them know, and it's going to be next meeting, what we're going to cut if we want a zero property tax increase. And I've got no problem with that. But I'll tell you something, somewhere down the road, this is going to come back. Because you keep cutting streets, and you keep cutting this, and you keep cutting that, and eventually there's times where you can't cut anymore. Then you start cutting the services. Well, that's a fact. There's no negotiation on that. That's exactly what's going to take place. So are we willing to do that as a council? Then okay. Again, I got no problem with it. But let's come up with the cuts and direct our city manager on what we're going to cut. If Mr. Kleberg's ideas are what we need, then by God, let's do it. Let's cut the $400-some-thousand out. But if that truck goes down, okay, services are going to suffer for that. So these are the things I just want to keep in mind. But us being criminal, that's a pretty harsh word. And they don't got a lot to back it up. So I just want to make sure that when we come to the agreement, that we all decide on what's best for the city, and we move forward. I got, again, 1.5%, 0%, it's okay with me. But let's make sure we all decide on what we're going to cut and where those cuts are going to come from. That's our job.
Mr. Mayor, could I have one more explanation?
Councilor Kleberg first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Also, as part of my, I didn't have a answer for this, and I don't know if Laura can answer this or not, but I noticed in the budget, public transit's budget is up $120,000. But all I saw for public transit was the bus shelters at $57,000. Ramps and shelters. So I'm just curious as to why the budget's gone up that much.
For the last 5 years, plus or minus, the city has capped the property tax investment in the transit program at $150,000. So however the bottom line changes, it's only a function of the amount of grants we get in for operating, preventative maintenance, and capital. The partnerships we have with the PTBA when we provide for their dispatch services, fare box revenue, Medicaid reimbursement, and in the last year, the partnership with Public Works. So when you say, well, there's a big change, the big change was from 2012 projected to 2013 proposed. The 2012 budget was originally $650,000, and we brought it in for $63,000 plus or minus less. And we did that by deferring capital projects that we had intended to have in FY12, but we're going to have them in FY13 because of other budget issues going on in the city. And those capital projects were 2 new shelters and all the handicap ramps that I understand is kind of a multi-purpose project. It may also be part of the local match for FEMA, and it also has something to do with the ADA plan that we have going on, because we have a liability in that all of our sidewalks, and where we have sidewalks, do not comply with ADA because of lack of ramps, so we're trying to address that. And transit, like all other programs, has incurred increased costs with fuel. Because of internal budgeting with the city, we are now paying services on our fleet, which you would expect, and that was $20,000 this year. Last year, when it came mid-budget year, we were able to come up with an accommodation through administrative services, so it cost us $10,000, and this year we're paying the full freight of $20,000. And we have had some wage increases for the people who remain on the staff because of longevity, but in fact, we've reduced the operating cost of our dial-a-ride system by having fewer hours assigned to that program. And some of those hours are just not recouped at all. They're just a savings. And some of those hours are transferred over to the fixed route side, which is how with that and some of Public Works' assistant, we're able to expand the fixed route by half. So the real difference is probably between the 2012 budget of $650 to the 2013 proposed of $699. It's about $50,000. Why is the budget going up $50,000? We've got fuel, we've got payroll, and we've got fleet charges accounting for the majority of it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Mayor, I have
Councilor
a question for you as well. Mr. Edelbutte made a statement a little bit earlier that I think confused transportation and transit. Was that your read on that?
That was my read as well.
Okay, so just for a point of clarification, the fees we were discussing, the water fees, et cetera, have nothing to do with transit.
Now, if you want to send them to transit, I could do a good job with it.
Yeah, but that was not a correct connection, is that? Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Mayor, I also just wanted to make a comment regarding transit. We actually, well, going back a few years ago, as you know, we lost a couple funding sources. Nez Perce County in particular, we lost about $60,000 in matching funds. And last year, we contributed $175,600 in taxes. We've actually brought that down. So the city's allocation to the transit is back down to the $150,000 mark. So the allocation is actually less.
Okay. Any other questions from council? Councilor Randall?
On our contributions to our nonprofits and our charitable distributions, I would suggest that maybe our city attorney check the Attorney General's opinion number 95-07 and verify that the contributions we're making are according to his legal opinion on whether we can do that or not. For each
next
entity.
week.
Yeah.
Okay. Evaluate each one of the ones that were.
See if they're
participating in.
justifiable by his opinion.
Any other discussions with council? Okay. Hearing none, those in favor of reading ordinance 4584 for the second time, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
Nay.
Okay. Raise of hands, those in favor? Okay. Those opposed? So motion carries 4-3 to read.
Approving the second reading of ordinance 4584 by title only, an ordinance to be termed the annual appropriation ordinance, appropriating sums of money authorized by law and deemed necessary for all general and special municipal purposes of the city of Lewiston, Idaho, for the fiscal year commencing October 1, 2012, and ending September 30th, 2013, providing for the filing of a copy of this ordinance with the Secretary of State as required by law, and providing an effective date.
Next item of business is reading ordinance 4586 for the second time. I'll entertain a motion to read 4586 for the second time.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we read ordinance 4586 for the second time.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to read 4586 for the second time. Is there any discussion by council? Councilor Kleber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, my vote stands on the last one, but I probably should have voted in the affirmative. This is the one that where my little pencil sharpening has come into place. So,
yeah.
Thank you.
Is there some amendments you want to propose at this time today?
Should we read first, or?
Well, if we're going to read it, we're going to read it as it stands, or do you want to wait and do your adjustments next week?
At this time, I would propose, if I can find my piece of paper I've been scribbling on,
Make that in the form of an amendment?
There we go. I would make a motion to amend ordinance 4586 by reducing the don't have the proper term right at the moment, but it would be the water funds, 106,000, the 250 for the TV truck, and the 120 for the ambulance refit at this time, for a total of $476,000.
Okay, can I have that again, please? I'm sorry. What are you reducing?
There was a line item, unscheduled funds for water of $106,000. There was $250,000 for a replace the TV truck for wastewater, and there's $120,000 for a refit of an ambulance, for a total of $476,000. That would be a reduction of the $15,817,530.
And Councilor
That is
Kleber,
my amendment.
Just Councilor Kleber, just by way of information, those are all property tax related, right?
As far as I can tell. If I'm wrong, somebody steer me in the right way.
That would be real helpful as we work through this, because there's sometimes a confusion.
Mr. Mayor, no. Water reduction would come out of water. Wastewater TV truck would come out of the wastewater fund. The ambulance would have an impact on the general fund through rates. We would reduce rates across all city funds, and even at that, it would be 60 to 70% reduction. Because some of those rates, it's a mutual fund concept, but the ambulance would be tax impact.
So this discussion, Mr. Mayor, just as a point of clarification, our discussion here is what's relative to
dollar figure.
To the dollar figure.
So the tax anticipation only amount, if I'm correct, would be the $150,000 would come off your tax certification amount.
120.
120 for the ambulance.
120,000.
Is that the intent of your motion, Mr. Kleber?
Not quite, but I'll withdraw the amendment at the moment.
Okay. Councilor Stevenson.
Well, then I'll make an amendment. I'd like to amend ordinance 4586 to read in the dollar amount of 0. In other words, no property tax.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to fix the property tax for this year to 0%.
It was a dollar amount.
$0.
Yeah.
You know what that?
So
right now we have
Well,
a tax.
I was just amending the amount.
But
so
this reads $15,817,530.
Yeah, and that's the amount.
15 million.
We can't say 0 there. We got a dollar figure in there.
There's $0.
So
In other words, 0 amount of tax. That was the amount of revenue anticipated by the tax, right?
Well, this is only the second reading. I mean, we can get those numbers, so I don't think you should get hung up on that tonight. Because we'll have the exact dollar number if that amendment is passed, so that we can make sure you know what that is and that the ordinance is correct for the final reading and potential adoption. Because I don't know what a 0% would.
I can get that, Jim.
Can you get that? Okay.
We have that.
Oh, okay. Well, hang on a second.
Yeah.
It's right here.
Yeah, maybe you want to start on page 4, Council. Top of page 4. And maybe we ought to start with the base, where we left off last year. And my question for Councilor Stevenson, I guess, would be, are you desirous of starting with the base or eliminating the base of 15 million altogether?
For 2013?
Yes. You're okay with the base? You're just saying what's a 0% increase? Or are you saying the city shouldn't request any taxes at all?
Oh, I'm saying 0, no taxes, but because it was a dollar figure here, I thought that I would need to make a dollar figure.
If you would like us to see us at a 0% tax increase, the base last year was $15,410,457. Now, the growth construction does not count against the 3% levy.
Right.
So the new growth of 98,867 in the next column over, that's we're entitled to that, and that's just growth. And so, in that case, I would add those two numbers together,
So,
and that would equal a 0%
Okay.
tax increase.
Okay.
So,
And that would be 98867 plus 154,104,557.
15,508.
509?
509,
509, excuse me.
324.
324, yeah.
$15,509,324.
Okay, so it's the 0% tax increase on the base.
Of $15,509,324.
Plus the growth in new construction.
Yeah, okay.
So we're clear on the amendment?
I hope so. I hope it's what I was thinking.
think
It's a
that's-
zero, that's what.
That's a zero.
Right, that's a zero.
Okay.
Each 1%, Mr. Mayor, is approximately $154,000.
Okay. So the second, Mr. Daniel still stands?
Yes.
Okay. Any discussion from council?
Okay, it was 15, 324.
Councilor Wortman?
Mr. Mayor, it sounds good. No one wants tax increases, but I believe that we did a responsible job of looking at 2%. I do believe that there are some discussions that are appropriate that may make it less than that. I don't think that we did a good job. It was popular at the moment, but not a responsible job in terms of running the city when we said 0% before. We as a city really missed the mark compared to a lot of other cities and what we accomplished because we don't take the full amount, but I think that's part of the culture here in Lewiston. I'm okay with that. We don't have to take 3%, but I think we had a healthy discussion in our work sessions, getting our discussions under control when we were talking about the differeces between 0.5%, 1%, 1.5%, and 2%, 2.5%. I'm pleased with the fact that Councilor Kleberg is not really suggesting that a lot of things disappear from what we had in those discussions. He's looking for alternate ways to fund those, and I think that's a healthy discussion. I don't have any problem with that. But when we came up with the 2%, there were a number of things that we felt needed to be done, and some of those things we agreed were going to have to be part of the city financial obligation. Certainly, salaries was one of those, although we have not been doing a great deal of salary building over the last few years, but there are some salary things that are included in here, minimal that they are. I believe that I would like to see us stick close to the 2% unless there are very specific items that can be pulled from what is a property tax obligation. Here's where we get into very interesting discussions because Councilor Randall has made a definite point. I know that we have a population that is going to be needing the ambulances more and more instead of less and less. That doesn't mean that we go out and buy ambulances willy-nilly. We have a plan for doing what we're doing. We don't go and buy $5,600 ambulances to put our people in. We put them in the best equipped ambulances that we possibly can to give them the highest level of service because we believe that's what people have told us that they want. It's easy to say, I don't want a tax increase for that particular purpose, and golly, geez, the fire department's getting more than its fair share, and it can wait. You heard from the chief that's a possibility. We know that is an expense that we have made as a calculated choice because that's what we think our citizenry wants and deserves. We're not playing games, mind games with people trying to convince them that they're getting the same ambulance for $5,600 that they get for the $120,000 refurbished that we're talking about or the plan that we have. If that delay of the year gets us to a palatable number and that's less than 2%, I could be supportive of that. I just heard, I have no reason for this meeting to be televised. We can go back to City Hall. I'd rather be putting the $26,000 a year, very frankly, into a larger City Hall meeting room on the second floor of the library, to be real honest about it. There are a lot of changes that can be made. I think as long as we're having a discussion, we need to be very clear that we have talked about larger numbers and that we have narrowed larger numbers down, and that we will continue to look at that this evening. I'm going to propose an amendment shortly that's a very innocuous one in terms of dollar figures. But here, if we want to move from 2% down, then let's look at what are the specific things that we might be able to do. I'm not buying into 0%. That sounds good, but I'm not sure that that's responsible.
Pro Tem Cannon.
Councilor Stevens, I'd support that. 0% property tax increase, if you could give me the amount of things that you're going to pull out of this budget. Just a second. Just to go and say 0 property tax increase, as Councilor Kleberg stated, he had 3 items that he was going to pull out of this budget, and then we would know what that is. We would know as a council what we're going to pull out of here. If you can come up with items to tell me what we're going to pull out of this budget for a 0 property tax increase, I'll support it. But just to say 0 property tax doesn't hold a lot of water with me. I just need to know what you're thinking and what you're doing. Now, once we get down to 0%, we can't go back up. Right, Mr. Marsh? We're done.
Well,
isn't that correct?
Mr. Mayor?
No, because we're making an amendment for 0 property tax. We have it in there for 2% right now. So if we say 0% tonight, this budget's done. Correct?
No.
We can't go back up to 2%.
Mr. Mayor, I'd probably defer to Jamie on that. I know once we publish 2%, we can't go higher than 2%. My instincts, I think you could bounce around until you finally agree on a number. You just cannot exceed.
So it's just a published figure?
That's my understanding.
Okay.
Yeah, because nothing's final until you final it at the final reading that they're reading next week.
Okay.
But I'd be happy to double check that, yeah.
Well, I guess we need to know that tonight.
No, that's my understanding. Once you publish it, you can come down. You just can't go up. But
in the negotiation
move up
stage,
and down,
you can go up and down.
Yes.
Okay, but like I state, if you can come up with something to tell us and these department managers what they're going to cut, I might support that. But just to say flat no 1% and these department managers got to go do it on their own, I don't agree with that.
Councilor Daniel.
I actually think in the reverse, if you want the property to increase, you should justify every line item for why it should be increased. It shouldn't just be if you don't want to if you don't want to increase it, you have to find a few things. Matter of fact, the whole year, when you come on to the Lewiston City Council, you're reminded that you are a part-time counselor, you're just a policy setter, not to get into the specifics. You're told all the time you're not a full-time city councilor. It's not how it's supposed to work. Now, we do get into some of the line item things, but that's not our primary responsibility. So I say if you really want to have the increase, I want you to go through the entire budget book and justify every line item then.
Well, that's, Mr. Mayor. This piece of paper right here specifies what that, and it's spelled across there, 0.5%, 1%, 1.5%, 2%, and 3% of exactly what our city would get for that property tax increase. So it is spelled out. So on what that increase would get us as far as the city's concerned. So it is spelled out when it comes to that, Councilor Daniel. So, and we have gone through those budget sessions, looking at each one of those line items and looking at each one of these things from the department manager's standpoint. So, okay, and we say, okay, this is what we're going to do. Go ahead. And now we're sitting here, we're going to negotiate back and forth, which that's why we do this. That's okay. But I want to know what we're going to cut out of this budget to get it to 0.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Kleberg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Okay, so since I've sharpened my pencil again, and again as part of the email that I sent to everybody earlier today, we have a bunch of public-private partnerships that we're involved in. Several of them, as a matter of fact, Valley Vision, beautiful downtown Lewiston, Hell's Canyon Tourism Bureau. We've all proposed like a 1% or whatever it was. It was a pittance as far as I'm concerned. And my comment was that I would support a large deduction to those organizations in order to preserve the contribution we make to the Boys and Girls Club, Meals on Wheels, senior nutrition program, things like that. Right there, I came up with $20,000. It's $10,000 off of Valley Vision, $7,500 off of beautiful downtown Lewiston, and $2,500 out of Hell's Canyon Tourism Bureau. We saw a library foundation in this town raise well over $1 million in partnership with a public entity. I haven't seen that contribution, especially with Valley Vision. I understand that they're working on promoting the Valley and stuff like that, but let's face it, we've been the partner. We have always been the partner. Clarkston contributes peanuts. Stoughton County contributes peanuts. The county has, Nez Perce County has reduced their contribution to it, and we're still holding the check for $40,000 a year out. Perhaps it's time for them to go back on a fundraising mission, and they can figure out how to recoup the $10,000. I would offer the same thing with beautiful downtown Lewiston, as well as the Tourism Bureau. I mean, they came in and wanted $20,000. We appropriated 10. As far as I'm concerned, they can get $7,500. I mean, who are they promoting? They're promoting the hotels, the jet boat operators, that kind of stuff. So you combine that with another item that we can discuss, since this was brought to my attention recently, the Joint Airport Authority. There's a kind of a wish list of a city share, county share for the HVAC system at the airport is $6,000. Terminal building roof, $10,000. The pavement paint striper, $2,500. The replacement of their tractor, $12,500. And the satellite parking area lighting and fencing is $7,500. You know, they had their budget published in today's paper. I'm sorry I didn't bring it with me, but it was in today's paper. I believe it was today's paper in the fine print. I know that they've been trying to do what they can with what they've got and stuff like that, but maybe it's time for some of the stuff to be picked up by them. That's $38,500. You add that to the 20, that's $58,500, and the fire department's ambulance of $120,000. Right there, Mr. Cannon, is $178,500, those specifics. I always said, and to follow up on Councilor Daniels' thing, after talking with our previous mayor one time, Nesset, that we are policy setters and we should be sitting up here. We don't need to be down in everybody's door, department heads, this and that. You need to do this, this, and this. I've never been like that. I don't intend to be like that. But these are some general policy issue things that I feel comfortable getting into. So, I mean, I can continue going on, and we've got one more week, but I'm offering that right now. So that's well over 1%. If 1% is 154,000, last time I checked, I was higher than that. So,
Councilor Urban.
Mr. Mayor, I think there are about 10 or 15 comments that probably could come from all of that, but let's just start down a list and do 2 or 3. No one's ever told me I was a part-time counselor, and no one's ever told me that I shouldn't spend 40 hours a week on this job, because I think it takes that to do it. To be real honest with you, this entire budget started off as a balancing budget, and I really appreciate that, because the intent is to put back in the reserves, and we have asked every department, and we've asked a lot of people to take 1%. There are some places where I think that makes it a little bit difficult to continue. I don't look at Valley Vision the same way that you do. I believe that it needed to beef up its operation, and I believe that there's proof that that has indeed happened. If we have even one business, and it's apparent, it's certainly been published, if we have one business that brings 23 jobs in here, and that started out by the email contacts that went to Valley Vision and their responses, and the research that was done by community development, for example, and Valley Vision, and they actually did that. Spoke to a boat builder who is contemplating adding up to 20 jobs as a result of what happened with the boat shows and the boat marketing and the boat sales that are out there. That's great. When we started talking with Howell Machine, they gave us a figure for the number of jobs that they would create before they moved up to or as they moved into their facility at the airport. He's already met that number of jobs. He's already exceeded that number of jobs and is predicting more. We have had very direct contacts from that group with SEL over time. It's not the only group. There are several, but the combination of people have worked on that. Community Development has worked on it. CETA has worked on it. Valley Vision has worked on it. It's a corporate effort. And we already, you know, if you were up there at the opening, we heard Dr. Schweitzer say he was going to open up another 50 jobs in that facility and add additional equipment, and the total bill for that was going to be $6 million for one item and $12 million for another. That's investment in Lewiston, and I don't think our $10,000 is ill spent. In fact, I wish we would hold that whole. Same thing is true for beautiful downtown Lewiston. But we invest in that as a very small amount. If you look in downtown Lewiston and what has happened in the course of the last year, I think there's a lot of evidence that there isn't any reason for us to be making a change there. We have had we've had a lot of beautification happening down there. We have rid ourselves of the ugly wall. We have an attractive wall. They have made direct contacts with the kinds of people who own the buildings downtown and are making that on a daily basis along with community development, and they are moving straight forward. We have seen examples that's there. It's in brick and it's in mortar. They have improved the facades downtown. They have worked on that program. They have worked to fill the buildings. There are buildings like Morgan's Alley that had a third of the buildings sitting unused, and it's full at the moment. There are a lot of things happening downtown that I think are a credit to the energies that downtown business group has done, and we've been doing it in concert with them. And I think it's a real foolish move to cut that. I think we should be celebrating the fact that we are all doing those things together. Another primary example is we have some eyesores downtown, and I know that beautiful downtown Lewiston has been in direct contact with the owners of those buildings and moving forward to make sure that somebody is in those buildings who is paying taxes, they are cleaned up, that they are not eyesores in downtown, and that there's a way to attract business. I don't think it's just for a specific item. I don't think that tourism just benefits tourism and tourism industries. I think it benefits all of us. The other items that I would address this evening, and we'll do that with amendment, I think there are some things in the community section of our programs that we do that are just good common sense. If we have 13,000 people going to Civic Theater and we have over 150 kids involved in summer programs just this year alone, cutting them even a simple $300 doesn't make a lot of sense when they're out there looking for money to fix a historic building. It's going to cost $500,000 to fix that building, and they've got to go out and look for those kinds of funds. I don't think we should be damaging a budget even by $300. Same as Valley Vision. I don't think there's any reason for us to take, or not Valley Vision, but the Valley Boys and Girls Club. There's no reason for us to take $150. I mentioned earlier that buys some cheese sandwiches. I've seen that program up there. I don't know what we would do in a community if we didn't have the kinds of programs that are there for the lock key kids and for the kinds of things that go on after school. I don't know what we would do if we didn't have a complementary program there with what is going on in the summer reading program with the library. I think we would just be buying extra trouble. I think some of these things are our insurance policy for a good community where we don't have kids involved in negative things, that we have them in positive things. If we could save 30 people in Community Park who would actually get out there and do exercising and not look like my body, and that would actually get out there and do what they need to do, think of the heart attacks that we would be saving, and think of what that would do in our ambulance and our insurance. I think we would be responsible citizens. And as we get older, we have to find more mechanisms to make that happen in a city rather than less mechanisms. Some of those can be private, some of those should be private, I understand that. But not everybody has the kind of wallet that some of us do. Not everybody can afford to pay for his or her own memberships to clubs, et cetera. They need those particular services in those particular parks. I think what the questions you're asking this evening are extremely responsible. I'm very pleased you're asking them, and there are some things that I think we can do. I think we can get the number a little smaller. I would hate to get us down to zero, very frankly. I don't have any problem if we want to cut a 0.5% or 1% off of this and try to achieve the basic goals. But when we talked about the items on this list, and we were referring to something you can't see, but we talked specifically about the kinds of items that would be that we would be supporting with these raises. We aren't talking about unimportant things. We're talking about pretty important things, and Councilor Kleberg has recognized that. He's not refuting that at all in his statements, I don't think. I think what you're doing is just looking for some alternate ways to fund the same proposal, and I'm more than willing to listen to that. But I think these are responsible things that we've looked for. We've done it carefully. I don't think anybody has done it lightly. Nobody likes tax increases. We have this week and next week to do some thinking and some sharpening of our pens, but I would be really disappointed if we headed towards zero without thinking about other ways to get there.
Councilor Stevenson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Councilor Cannon, in previous years, I have submitted a list of suggestions to the rest of the council, and I didn't do that this year for two reasons. The first is that each time I was ridiculed for submitting specific numbers. Each number was torn apart, and I'm not going to do that again. The second reason is that I firmly believe, as Councilor Kleberg and Councilor Daniel have said, that that's not our job to be the ones doing the line item. I mean, we can make suggestions about the trend we view as being the important things are the basics: fire protection, police protection, clean water, sewer, streets to drive on. So within that, or that piece of paper that you're referring to also included, because I asked continually that we include 0% increase. It has 0, right, on that sheet? Okay. So it's simple. I mean, my response would be, well, then perhaps use that as a baseline, the ones that are on that list, and that's the list submitted by staff. If there's any change that people want, and it's going to be tough. I don't even have the list with me this evening because I know it's not simple. But I just wanted to stress the important things that we learned in the reading the survey, the citizen survey. And these are important things to remember. 58% of the people, or the respondents, oppose increasing enterprise fees. 49% opposed increasing user fees. 40% opposed increasing permit fees. 76% opposed increasing property taxes. These are our citizens here in the area where we have, what, almost 7.5% unemployment, 7.3, 7.5. 52% of our citizens who were in this universe of the survey opposed increasing franchise fees. Those are all strong indicators that this community and the things we learn about, they're happy with the services we have, and a certain percent want to see that stay that way. But these are strong indicators that we have citizenry that is struggling. And so I would appreciate that we at least consider the option and the kinds of things that the other councilors may have suggested.
Mr. Mayor. Pro Tem Cannon.
Councilor Stevenson, was there also another item in that survey that stated that people would pay property tax increase so they would not suffer a reduction in services?
Right.
What percentage was that? Could you read that for us, please? Because I don't seem to have that with me.
Yeah, I was looking for it so I could read that.
I mean, you state a lot of things there, which are true, but there's also an item in there that people do not want their services sacrificed, and they would pay more property tax for that. And that was quite a high figure, if I remember correctly.
46%. Okay, 43% said they feel they're getting their money's worth for their tax dollars. And another percent, but there was another, I agree, there was another one.
I don't know if you see it or not.
Yeah, but the point is that the cross-tabulation figures are revealing. They show a citizenry that's struggling about taxes. And I think that we at least should seriously think about it in this economic climate.
Councilor Daniel.
That's the question and a comment. I'm actually kind of encouraged all of a sudden if, assuming Councilor Kleberg makes a motion to amend, with
No,
this,
I already did.
No, after this motion that we have on the floor, if he makes a motion to amend for the items that he listed, that's about 1% or so, right? And then once Councilor Ortman comes up with that 0.5% that he mentioned that doesn't have anything to do with what he mentioned, we're only at a 0.5% of that. Or so I'm actually strangely.
I'm actually increasing $1,100, Councilor Daniels.
No, but you had mentioned we're going to go down from 2% to 1.5%.
I didn't mention we're going to. I said it's there.
Okay. Well, anyway, so I was going to ask Councilor Kleberg to please motion to amend after the item on the floor.
Well, what if mine passes? Good grief! Think positively, man.
But, I would ask him to do that afterwards.
I would probably hold that for the final reading.
Okay.
Because I still have a few things I want to take a look at. But thanks for the offer. Well,
Councilor Randall.
I was looking at the current CPI for this last July, for the last 12 months.
But it's only for July. It's only for July, that figure you gave us. It's not for the last 12 months.
Yes, it was for the last 12 months.
I don't think so.
CPI for the last 12 months was 1.4%. So if we went on that, I don't think it would be unrealistic to go 1.5% for our increase for our budget. I can't see zero. I'm sorry, I can't see zero. But at the same time, I can't see 2% either. I'm somewhere in between 1 and 1.5, somewhere in there. I can see that. I don't see giving away the ambulance. I think that's a very important part of our community. And things with police and fire in particular, and streets in particular, I think it's very important that we keep those maintained. We can give up community parks improvements and stuff like that, whereas we can have to keep those streets and police and fire going.
Councilor Kleberg.
thank you, Mr. Mayor. Getting back to the discussion, I have no beef. I think Brianne's done a great job with beautiful downtown Lewiston. It's not about or Valley Vision. I think Doug's done a fine job there. My point is that if you look at over the years, contribution from the city's probably run close to $650,000. 20 years. You were citing Howell Machine. That was a seeded deal. That wasn't Valley Vision. That was seeded.
No, but some of the discussions have involved.
Doesn't matter. I mean, this was going to create all these jobs. Back when it was founded, I had my bicycle shop, had people in there beating my door down. They wanted me to contribute to Valley Vision 2000. That was back in 1995. Well, so here we are. We're the sole funding source outside of the private world. Let's face it, we are. It's something we need to take a look at. There's a reason why other people are reducing it. The comment about Morgan's Alley, I'll tell you that, my opinion, I know the owners very well. A lot of that was marketing and rejuvenating the facility, and that's why it's more active. That was out of their pocket.
But that was done. Well, we'll go there.
They also have beautified several other buildings downtown since they've been buying property here. So obviously they're attracted to the town, whether it was because of BDL or not. I don't know. They're from Moscow. Maybe they decided to branch out. But I don't know if you can lay that all square in the lap of that. And I don't know how you quantify that contribution. Does that really mean, by our contribution to that particular group, does that really mean that that's what's happening here in town? I don't know. Does that really mean that that's why Schweitzer came down here? Or because it's got a better business climate than what he's got up there? I mean, we're making assumptions. That's what I call them. But as far as where we're at tonight, I can fully support the amendment that Councilor Stevenson proposed, which was a 0% property tax increase. It does present us with a balanced budget per our city manager. Yes, there will be some needs, but I've already identified a few areas of savings, and I hopefully can expound on that. So even at a 0%, if we can pare some things down, we still might get the things that we wanted at a 2% property tax increase without raising the property tax. Talking $300 and something thousand, $308,000. As far as I'm concerned, I'm halfway there, so I'll leave it at that.
I think that the budgeting process, we go through our strategic plans. Staff puts a lot of time and effort into looking ahead at what it takes to keep the city moving. This isn't, the city is not something you can just start and stop. It's actually a process that's moving along, and the best we can do is you can affect it by the budget on what you can start and stop. The problem we got to be cognizant of is it's easy to sit up here and just say, I want a 0% property tax and let staff increase and let staff figure it out. However, the unintended consequences of that may be that we're going to have to drain our savings accounts, our reserves, to pay for things like our federal grant money for some projects we've got out there, whether it's the FEMA stormwater or Snake River Avenue or some of these other federal grant that we're leveraging our dollars. For every 7 cents we're putting in, we're getting 93 cents back. And so we're leveraging our dollars. And I think that's a wise use of our money. But if we defer those and we miss our chance, and I think we went through that education process with the Snake River Avenue project, that we stand to have to turn that money back because we made a commitment back when we put in that grant application that we would carry through with this project on that schedule and that we'd be budgeting accordingly to make that. So as you go through and you're voting for a 0% property tax increase, I think you need to realize and be cognizant of any unintended consequences you may have, of what that may have. And for me, it took the city a long time to build up its fund balances to where that really is a fiscal responsible thing to do for our operations, because we're paying a lot of money in tax and participation notes and a lot of interest otherwise. And so I think that's a prudent way to operate the city and minimize the cost to our taxpayers. But for us to go through 10 budget meetings and go through the process of here's our capital improvement plans and this is what we have for this year, and we've asked, there was a good give and take then. I think a lot of things came off the table at that time. And I think staff did a very good job of trying to get a read at the council of what we could or couldn't approve. And I just don't think it's responsible leadership on anybody's part to, after you go through that process, just come back and say, I want a 0%, staff figure it out, because you haven't taken ownership of that. And so I can support what Councilor Kleberg is doing. I'm all ears. I think that that is really the prudent path, because what we're doing is you go back to your notes, you go back to the strategic planning things, what the minutes and the costs that were there, and identify some projects that, as a policy board, we said these were good at that time. That was our time to say, well, we're not in support of this or that. I mean, we had plenty of time when we set the limit, the tax limit, 2.5% the end of July, to even go further. But we decided to kick the can down the road. And I think for right now, I can't support the 0% because I don't think it's responsible without naming the dollars. I think that is just something our citizens, when they come and ask us what their tax money is going for and what their tax increase is going for, we can put a name on that. We can show some specific projects of why the taxes were raised if they are this year. If I'm all for it, if we can show that we can keep the level of services up and keep our service delivery where it's at and not impact that, and not have a property tax, I'm all ears, guys. But That also means we need to fund our capital projects that we've gone on tap, especially the ones on the federal funding that are on a specific timeline. So I just ask you to be cognizant of that. Councilor Kleberg.
No, I'm good.
Oh, I think you,
Councilor Stevenson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have had, is it 10 or 13 budget sessions?
10.
10. And at almost each one, I have consistently said that I support a zero increase in property taxes, so that's not new throughout that whole time. And furthermore, I'd like to respectfully request that we shorten the number of those meetings, and I've also asked that every single time. Most other cities have maybe 3, and it's not clear to me what we needed to do in 10 sessions. So I would like to see us work towards next year, perhaps shortening that window of time.
I'll second that if you'd like to make a motion.
Yeah, I mean, it's not clear that we couldn't have, accomplished the same kind of thing in shorter, fewer sessions, and all parties, the staff as well as us, would probably do just as well.
Councilor.
Just one comment. Councilor Kleberg, I'm well aware of the sources of the beginning of some of those projects, and Howell is one of them that you mentioned. And I sit on the seat of finance and operations, so it's not something I'm unaware of. But the point I'm trying to make is, in all of the economic development, I think we get our $40,000 worth, personally. There are probably moments when we don't see it, but I have seen an awful lot more over the last couple of years that I have been able to identify as direct results there, and the linking that has happened. It's interesting linking. We probably pay an awful lot more than the $40,000 because we pay some for community development. We have some very active links that are going on right now. I think they're demonstrable. I really believe that there is a concerted effort on the part of all of those entities to develop not just downtown, which is, was one part of our community structure, but the south side of the airport. If you want to talk to me about some of the airport capital projects, that's a whole different discussion. Because we're at a different stage with the joint airport authority than what we were a couple of years ago. I'm certainly willing to have that conversation with you, but I would like to underscore the fact that we have a lot of good things that have been happening, and they didn't happen because there was just a good business climate here. They happened because a lot of people cultivated that. A lot of people have taken that message on the road. They have responded to questions as they have come into the community. I guess I am confident that there are enough people watching the activities of those organizations very carefully to make sure that it isn't cotton candy, that it is in fact a very solid diet, and that we are getting things done. If you had asked me to make that statement 5 years ago, I wouldn't have made the statement I just made now. I would have concurred with you on a far greater level, because I don't think there was an openness. I don't think there was a willingness to share what was being done, what wasn't being done, and there were no direct victories being shared with us at any time. And at that time, I was very uncomfortable with what we were doing. But my level of comfort, having worked with all 3 of those groups that we've mentioned, and the 4th group, community development, and watching what they have done and watching their presentations that they have made to the business community and elsewhere. What used to be a little bit on the plebeian side is a class act. There's a change, and I'm pleased about that. Same way with URA and lots of other things.
I sit on the board of Valley Vision, but I'm willing to give up that seat if any of the council members would like to sit there. That would really open your eyes. The board members are, a lot of times, Valley Vision is approached by clients that want complete discretion. They don't. Sometimes they don't even want. You have to sign a release that you can't even acknowledge they've come and talked to you. I can tell you that Schweitzer Engineering Labs would probably not be here if it wasn't for Valley Vision. I can tell you that Howell Machine would not be where they're at without the help of Valley Vision. There's contacts and things that they're making now, and people that have contacted them, they're going to bear fruit in the future, and they're actively marketing in the south side of the airport. And when I first came on here, I'd made the comment that I don't know if I could support Valley Vision because I thought it was getting stale. And anyway, after sitting a couple of years now on the board, my eyes are definitely open. And maybe it's time that one of you that haven't had an opportunity to do that, sit down on a Tuesday afternoon at St. Joe's Hospital one day a month for a couple hours and hear what Doug is doing and what his updates are, because you're meeting with the whole board there. And I think it would really enlighten you on what they're doing. It's easy to see, to say, let's cut this $40,000, but I think the amount of tax money that we bring in for their efforts far offsets that. And I don't see the counties stepping up and offering any of their tax money they're receiving from Schweitzer back because they didn't pay into Valley Vision the last couple of years as some kind of proportion. So unfortunately, yeah, is it fair that we bear the brunt of that economic development activity? No, I agree, it isn't. But I think we need to sit down with those folks and have a serious conversation about what we can as a city afford to help them with. It's a little late in the game now, but really, again, it's the unintended consequences of your decisions when you're not completely fully informed. And I think it's prudent that we think about that. But again, I can support Councilor Kleberg's efforts in looking through the budget and identifying items that we can cut the budget so that we can get to a number we can agree to. Councilor Stevenson.
Was that a request for you to exchange places with someone?
Sure. If somebody's interested, I'd be more than willing to do that.
All right. I'd like to.
Okay. I'll send the notice to. Is there any other council members interested?
No, I just had a comment.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I want to make sure nobody else is.
What we'll do is we'll handle that in other business later on, and we can make that happen. Councilor Kleberg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I guess I understand what you're saying, but still in all, we've gotten into these partnerships. So I'm just going to throw this one out. We've got all sorts of partnerships. A couple that really come to mind that open my eyes up. And Mr. Barker is going to laugh when I say this. We cut the grass for the Idaho Transportation Department at the entryway into North Lewiston. We're in a partnership with them, and this is how much we get. Zero. They don't pay us to cut their grass, but we go out there and maintain it. It looks nice. Corps of Engineers down at Kiwanis, how much is the Corps of Engineers paying us to cut the grass and make it look nice? And we have all sorts of these. What's the airport paying us to cut the grass up and maintain Airport Park? So it seems to me that over the years, we've gotten into these partnerships that have been one-sided inside of the other partner, Community Park. I mean, I still would like to see the hard dollar figure, what the school district has invested up there. I got to believe it's peanuts compared to what we put in. And LCSC obviously is not even a player anymore, even though they own the property. So, I guess that's something that we as a council and management of the city need to take a look at. How many more of these discussions or how many more of these partnerships can we afford for our citizens?
Yes, I've got another one I'll throw out there for council to think about is I think it's 26 or 28,000 we're paying for emergency planning to the county. I think that might be up for something that might be a county function, not a city, that I think we need to seriously consider.
I suggested that one a long time ago.
Good idea.
It went nowhere.
So, any other discussion? The amendment on the floor is for 0%.
I just had a comment on the whole Valley Vision piece. You know, I'm not saying they don't have a value. I'm not saying they don't help bring in jobs. But if they really had that kind of a return of investment, then why are we stopping at 40,000? Why not give them 200,000? If they were really bringing in that much extra revenue, I mean,
I'd like that.
You know, well, I'm serious though. You know, if the return on investment was that high, why stop at 40,000? I don't think it's that high. They do have value. But I did want to make one more point. You know, the unintended consequences of raising taxes on people on fixed incomes, which we have a lot of those people in Lewiston, especially during a recession. I don't know. Those can outweigh a lot of issues. Now, I know we may be bound to some federal grants, and I understand that we may have to, you know, spend those monies. But we can find a way to get down to 0%, or at least try to.
Any other discussion on the amendment on the floor for 0% to setting the tax certification to $15,509,324? Those in favor of the amendment, raise your hand. Those opposed, raise your hand. Amendment fails 3-4.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Pro Tem Cannon.
I'd like to amend ordinance 4586 for a 1.5 property tax increase, which would bring the amount to $15,541,824.
Second.
541,824, if my math's correct.
We'll double check.
Thanks.
541. That's low, I can tell.
Well, it'd be the last year's levy plus the 98,867 plus the 232.5, right?
But either way, 1.5% was.
Yeah, either way, 1.5%. Was promised that we can probably go and look for some more cuts. Let's get together, Mr. Kleberg. Let's have lunch.
I think maybe the piece, Mr. Mayor, the piece you may have been missing was the new growth, the construction.
The 98,867?
Yeah, did you add that in?
Yes, sir.
Okay, the figure I get is 15,663,425.
Okay, well, I added it twice, but maybe I added it wrong.
Wrong kind of calculation.
You know what? Wait a minute. No, I took a full percent.
You're wrong?
Calculator, dang it.
You have a calculator and you're wrong?
Start from scratch. By 0.5%. Yeah, by 0.5%. It's even more than that.
I learned math the old way, Mr. Marsh.
Yeah.
Adding the numbers in columns, carrying the one. No.
No, that hasn't changed, no.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Ortman.
Has that been seconded?
Yes, Councilor Daniels.
Okay. Should I, do you wish to address that before I?
No, go ahead and
give the motion. I think that's interesting. I think we have some possibilities that are there. I think that keeps us from gutting the process. It does not keep us from looking at specific items that Councilor Kleberg has talked about that we certainly can look at.
Absolutely.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilor
Did we
Stevenson.
get a more firm opinion about, to make sure that we can still adjust this number up and down as long as it's not past 2%?
Until the third reading, we can make it anything. Is that correct?
It's not open to.
We can't go over 2.5.
Yeah.
2.
Is that correct?
2. Over 2.
Once we certify the amendment, can't go over.
Right, so until the third reading, we can still go up and down.
We can still negotiate, in other words, correct? Next meeting? Okay.
Okay, the amendment on the floor is for a 1.5%.
Just double checking it. Triple checking it now.
Property tax for whatever amount that is, to be verified.
Mr. Mayor, came up $15,740,480.
Could you tell us what you're putting in that figure, Mr. Marsh, just so
Sure,
we can?
it'd be last year's base, 410, 457.
Plus 1.5%.
Plus 1.5%, plus the new growth of 98,867.
So the 1.5% is 232.5?
Sounds about right.
Sounds about right.
Okay.
So 15,740,000.
480. 15,740, 480.
480.
And if you refer to your citizens guide, it's in the guide. That amounts to approximately $1.14 a month per $100,000 of assessed value.
Could you repeat that again, please?
$1.14 a month on any property per $100,000 of assessed value.
For residential.
For residential.
Yeah. Commercial's a different story.
Mr. Mayor.
Pro Tem Cannon.
Again, I make the motion to lower that from 2 to 1.5. I still agree with our counselors here that we can try to find a little more to get it down a little bit more if we need to. And I think we can take every effort to do that. But again, I think it's a good start and trying to get it done. But I will certainly look over this budget again and see the things that I can cut. And you know, Mayor, you said emergency management program of 18,000. If we cut out the TV, that's 44,000 bucks we can cut out right there. Not that I want the TV cut out, because I think people watch us a lot and it's a good communication thing. But again, if we're going to start cutting, let's look at everything. Let's not look at just selective things. So
okay.
Anyhow, that's just my comment.
Okay. Councilor Daniel.
I did have a question. With the recent discussions going on at the county level regarding the juvenile detention center, what kind of budget impact would that have? Because currently right now, when the police apprehend a juvenile, they take them there and they away. I mean, are we going to have to babysit them? Is that what's going to be the process?
No, we wouldn't do that.
Okay.
No, we would, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, and I think, is the chief here?
Yes, chief's here.
I think the chief would say, no, we're not babysitting them. No, we would probably turn them over to their parents or turn them over to the county facility, okay. And they can hold them somewhere until they can transport them. The detention is a county responsibility. Okay. But before we had the detention facility, we simply held them until their parents came down to pick them up.
Okay. Any other discussion of the motion on the floor? The amendment of 1.5% for $15,740,480. Hearing none. Those in favor, raise your hand. Those opposed? Motion carries 5-2. Okay, now we'll read, again, the motion on the floor is to read Ordinance 4586 for the second time as amended. Is there any other further discussion on the motion? Councilor Daniel?
I supported the amendment just because I think it's going in the right direction. I still would like to go down to 0%, but we're going in the right direction. I applaud Councilor Cannon for offering up that amendment. So.
Okay. Any other discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of reading Ordinance 4586 for the second time, raise your hand.
As amended, right?
As amended. Okay, those opposed? Motion carries 5-2.
Approving the second reading of Ordinance 4586 by title only, an ordinance fixing and establishing the tax certification on all taxable properties situate within the corporate limits of the City of Lewiston for the fiscal year commencing October 1, 2012 and ending September 30th, 2013, for the purpose of providing and raising monies for municipal and corporate purposes, providing for the tax certification to the Board of County Commissioners of Nez Perce County, Idaho, in the dollar amount of, looking for it here, $15,740,480, providing a certified copy of the annual appropriation ordinance to the Board of County Commissioners of Nez Perce County, Idaho, and adopted by the City of Lewiston for the 2012-2013 fiscal year, and providing an effective date.
Okay, Ordinance 4586 has been read for the second time. We'll be here for the third reading and adoption next week. More to come. Next item of business is Resolution 2012-37, amending water and wastewater fees and charges. This was tabled from last week. I'll entertain a motion to read Resolution 2012-37.
Mr. Mayor, you need first a motion to take it off the table.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we take off the table Resolution 2012-37, which was tabled until time specific for this evening.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to pull Resolution 2012-37 from the table. Is there any discussion?
It's a non-debatable motion.
Oh, that's right. You went through that for me. Thank you. I need all the help I can get. So, okay, those in favor of pulling Resolution 2012-37 off the table, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, same sign.
Nay.
Motion carries 6-1. Okay, Resolution 2012-37 has been pulled off the table, is on the floor for consideration. I'll entertain a motion to read Resolution 2012-37.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to read Resolution 2012-37. Is there any discussion from council?
Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Daniel.
I think in this case, each part of the resolution could stand on its own. Therefore, I move that we consider the 2% increase to the water and wastewater fees separately from the 3% increase to water, wastewater that will be transferred to the transportation fund.
You move to amend the resolution? Is this what you're doing?
I'm moving that we divide the question, basically to consider each part. So consider the 2% increase to the water and wastewater separately from considering the 3% that goes to the transportation fund.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to divide the question to water and wastewater separately. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Mayor?
Pro Tem Canada.
Question for our city attorney. Can we do that? The way this is written, are we violating something here to where we can split this up into two separate pieces of legislation?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, right now, without another resolution, you can't do that. That doesn't mean you can't consider separate sections of it in terms of amendments. So if you want to amend a certain part of it, you can certainly say this, I want to amend section 1, number 1A, B, whatever that is, and take that as a separate issue.
So, Councilor Daniel.
Okay.
Would you consider withdrawing your motion and put a motion
I withdraw
for
my
amendment?
motion. Yeah, I withdraw my motion. I'll make a different motion at this point. I move we amend Resolution 2012-37 and make the increases that will be transferred to the transportation fund limited to 1 year to a 1 year period that will expire at the end of fiscal year 2013.
Second, for purposes of discussion.
I'm sorry, can I ask you to repeat that one more time?
I'm sorry. I move that we amend Resolution 2012-37 and make the increases that will be transferred to the transportation fund be limited to a 1 year period that will expire at the end of fiscal year 2013.
Okay. So it's been moved and seconded to amend the resolution to read, this will be effective for a 1 year period and expire on September 31st, 2013.
Mr. Mayor, if I might, that's all you're doing anyway. You're only approving fees for a year.
Yeah, but your starting out point each year, you kind of go off of what you're currently at. And if your starting out point next year reverts back to where we're here now, when you say, oh, we're only raising it, if you try to raise the fees next year to 2%, it would just be it'd just be 2% more as opposed to 2% more on top of our increase that we're putting on this year.
Like compound interest.
Yeah.
If I might, Mr. Mayor, it still doesn't change this resolution. What you're suggesting does not change the numbers on this resolution.
Yeah, it's next year when the resolution comes before us, we'd have to consider what the base is. I understand what the city attorney is saying. Is that, yeah,
I understand what you're trying to do. It just doesn't change the resolution itself.
We don't approve the rates, and
yeah.
Does that make sense, Councilor Daniel?
It makes sense. I guess rates are usually a fixed amount, and you start off the discussions each year at your current rate, whether or not you're going to 0%, 1%, 2%, 3%, or if you're going to do a reduction, that's at your current level. And basically what I'm doing is trying to change what that current level would be at this time, fiscal year 2013.
Well, maybe there's a way to phrase it differently about base rate.
Councilor Daniel?
Make a
Randall?
suggestion to Councilor Daniel that he state a flat dollar amount instead of percent.
I don't know what the flat dollar amount would be.
It doesn't change the intent.
It'd still be the percent.
Okay. Well, based on the advice from the city attorney, I withdraw my motion.
So the motion to amend has been withdrawn. So we still have the motion to read on the table, Resolution 2012-37. Councilor Rand.
According to the Citizens Guide to the Budget, 20% of fees go towards salary. So basically 20% of this increase is going to go towards wage increases. Is that how I understand it?
If that's how the breakdown is in the department, I mean, it would be applied across the board.
Okay.
But let me interject here. I know what Councilor Daniel's trying to get at, and I can support that. I mean, we proposed that this year to do two things. One was to balance the general fund, but the other was to get the street fund out of a serious hole that it's in for at least another year to 18 months because of the stormwater fee refund. If the intention is that at the end of the year that increase be zeroed out and become the new starting point for next year, I have no problem with that at all. Because we're trying to do two very open things this year. Balance the general fund and make sure that streets can still continue its mission to maintain our street system because of this temporary situation we have with having to refund stormwater fees.
Councilor Daniel, in the past city council I was on first to rebuild part of Snake River Avenue, they actually went into foregone taxes with the promise that those foregone taxes would be deducted from the following year's budget, that it wouldn't be put into the base. And so we were concerned how that worked. And anyway, it was when we came to our base amount that was deducted off before we started on any new programs and that. So I guess it's how we can account for it to where we're confident that what we're not doing is building this into the base. And I think that's what we have to do every budget year. Councilor Kleber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had a chance to talk with Councilor Daniel today. I'd actually, from the way it's been presented, there's been some confusion because I've had a lot of people ask me about, well, wait a minute, you're just backdooring it. You're raising the fees because you want to fund transportation. I understand the concept that, say, their sanitation contracts with SDI, they pay a certain percentage for wear and tear on our streets. I can't believe that our wastewater and water trucks put the same amount of impact, physical impact on the streets. But to date, apparently they haven't been paying anything into the transportation budget. So I do follow the logic on that. I think 5% is a little steep. I would prefer to see it kept at 4%. We've got a memo here from Public Works from Mr. Davies, and basically it's comparing utility rates, particularly the wastewater rates. And I know Councilor Cannon has some affinity for this since his father helped start the LOSD back in the day, and I'm a member of it. I'm not looking at raising mine. When I look at what I'm paying to LOSD at $13.47 on the average, Lewiston Orchard's home, City of Lewiston, people down there are paying $24.26. What is up with that? I mean, we've had these discussions going back to the growth task force and stuff, same thing with COSD. Again, how do we enter into these agreements where the city of Lewiston becomes the biggest partner in this stuff? I know we've had negotiations going on, and I'm assuming they're still ongoing, but to me, it seems like that the patrons of LOSD, and my neighbors probably throw eggs in my house, but we're on the pale, it doesn't seem like we're paying our fair share. We're certainly not paying as much as the patrons of the city of Lewiston. And I still don't understand why that is. I know that they took out a bond and they built the infrastructure. Same thing with COSD. That's all water under the bridge. You still have a facility that treats the same wastewater, whether it comes from my house up in the orchards, whether it comes from McSorley School, it's all going through the same pipes eventually and going down to the wastewater treatment plant. So to me, it's just been very confusing, and I don't know how we've gotten to this point. So.
Well, I can say we are working on that now to try and correct that balance that we don't have right now with either of the sewer districts in the form of new contracts that would address that specific issue. The problem is the way the old contracts were written, it doesn't put the city in a real strong position. So we're going to have to negotiate that with the sewer districts, even though it's the right thing to do, even though it's the fairest thing to do, even if it brings things in balance. The bottom line is they don't have to agree unless we negotiate that. And that's what we're trying to do right now.
Mr. Mayor? Go ahead, Councilor Kleberg.
As a follow-up, then, I could see as a, if you factor in the number of connections, I'm just talking residential at this point, but you factor in the connections in LOSD and COSD versus what's on the city system. I got to believe that the LOSD, COSD probably exceeds the city system. And if those rates go up to LOSD and COSD patrons, I would expect maybe a commensurate drop to the city of Lewiston patrons.
That would be correct.
To balance things out.
That's how it would be set up.
So I just want that straight for everybody, too.
I think Mr. Davies had a comment. Chris, did you want to add something? I saw you raising your hand.
Oh, he moved over here. I thought he was sitting up there. I thought he bailed on us, so.
I've been waiting for your question.
May I say something before Mr. Davies?
Pro Tem Cannon.
And you're right, Mr. Kleberg. My dad was instrumental in starting or selling or getting that done in the LOSD. One thing we also want to keep in mind when it comes to those entities and the contract negotiations which are going on right now, LOSD also contracts with the city to maintain their sewer lines and to keep them, they televise them, they clean them with their trucks and that kind of thing. LOSD also contributed, I believe it was $500,000 to help the rebuild of the sewage treatment plant when that process went through. So they are a bigger partner, I think, than what people really realize in our community and what they contribute to the city of Lewiston. Dad was always very instrumental in maybe a little outspoken when it came to his thoughts and his ideas of the partnerships and the contract negotiations and those type of things. But the things that the citizens of downtown Lewiston don't understand is how much of a partnership that really is and what they have contributed over the years. So, you know, there's not many entities that will give you $500,000 when you're rebuilding a sewage treatment plant. But that was the case. And so, yeah, they may be paying a little less up there because they took the gamble, they bought the bonds, they paid the bonds off, and they helped with the quality of that area up there, getting rid of septic tanks and that kind of thing, which was vital to our city. A big part of the growth of that community, to be on a sewage system. And so I think there's a little more than just they're paying this rate and we're paying this rate. I think there's a little more that enters into that people don't understand. So when we start talking about that, I think we certainly want all the information and things that sewer district has contributed and maybe helped the people of the city of Lewiston understand maybe why they're paying a little bit less. Is that a fair statement, Mr. Bennett?
Yes, sir. I think it is. We need to work out an arrangement so that everybody is paying their fair share.
Absolutely.
And we're going to do that.
Councilor Daniel.
You know, just I'm sure this has been brought up in the past, probably, you know, previous councils before me. But you know, if you combine the sanitation, water, and wastewater amounts that are planned to be transferred to the transportation fund, that equals about $500,000. And when you think about it, you know, when you're filing your taxes, you can deduct your property taxes. But if some of those dollars are kind of hidden in the fees, you can't deduct those. So you're in essence taking $500,000 out of the community in more ways than one. Just something to think about.
We'll let you go back to 2%. In a heartbeat.
Any other discussion on the resolution on the floor to read Resolution 2012-37? Hearing none.
Mr. Mayor.
Pro Tem Cannon.
After the discussion last week, and we tabled this till tonight, you always hear from some individuals from our city that say that we're the highest taxed entity in the city of Lewiston, or in the state of Idaho, and we pay the highest water rates and the highest sewer rates. And I find that hard to believe, and I want the facts. I don't want somebody telling me that Joe Bob told somebody over here that we're the highest property tax in the state of Idaho, which we're not. I went to the property tax division of the Idaho taxing entity and found out we're 22nd in the city for property tax.
Out of 67.
What's that?
Out of 67.
Out of 67, we're 22nd. It's kind of interesting to read that and look at that information because Craigmont, Idaho pays higher taxes than we do. And I don't think too many people know that. So does cul-de-sac. Their levy rate is a lot higher than what the city of Lewiston's levy rate is. So based on their exemption and based on their assessment of their property, they pay higher taxes than we do. So the same discussion came, and I'd like, Chris, would you kind of go over this a little bit for us tonight, just so people kind of understand when it comes to water rates and sewer rates and the studies and the amount of cities that you investigated, kind of where we sit today? Again, I think when people come here and say that, I don't got nothing to tell them any different. Now we have the information. And so I think that's important for people here tonight and are listening on the TV that we aren't the highest sewer and water rate in the state of Idaho. Mr. Davis, if you would please.
Mayor, Councilor, City Manager, this memo was put together just kind of to look at what the city of Lewiston pays in relationship to the communities around that surround us, but also AIC did a study of, they asked for information, voluntary information from other cities throughout the state. I took the information that we have. Again, this is based on 2012 rates for the 3 water utilities serving the valley: City of Lewiston, Lewiston Orchards Irrigation District, and the Stoughton County Public Utility District. One thing you have to really look at when you start comparing these things is, when you say my bill's $30 a month, well, mine's $90. Is it on a monthly basis, bi-monthly? So there's all these things that go into it, and trying to compare all these things, it's difficult at best. But if you look at the tables that were really kind of presented, we looked at usage based on 100 gallons a day per person, 75 gallons a day, or 50 gallons a day. And when you get down to 50 gallons a day per person, the city of Lewiston has the lowest rates, from anywhere from 1 to 4 people. If you go up to 100 gallons a day, it's either the city of Lewiston or a Stoughton PUD. So, it just really depends on what your usage is. There is no typical family in the valley that says, this is what we use. But if you look at Table 4, it gives you a cost of various usage in gallons over a 3-month period. And in every instance, up to 20,000 gallons over that 3-month period, the city of Lewiston has the lowest rates for water. So, you can pick a higher number and we're going to have a higher rate because that's where kind of that break-even point is. When you look at the Association of Idaho Cities, what they did, there was 95 cities, that completed their domestic water consumption report. 28 of the 95 cities had rates lower than the city of Lewiston. 66 had higher water rates. So that kind of tells you where we are in relationship to the rest of the cities within the state of Idaho. The highest rate was for 10,000 gallons was $73.21 for the city of Greenleaf. The lowest for 10,000 gallons was $9.50, and that's for the city of Buell. The city of Lewiston's sitting at $28.71. So that kind of gives you an idea where water is. For wastewater rates, City of Lewiston on a monthly basis, single family home only, doesn't deal with commercial or anything like that. We're at $24.26. The Stoughton County is at $31.49. LOSD is at $13.47. And COSD is roughly around 20. That's kind of where we're at. AIC they had 86 cities send in their information. And again, you know, this is for flat rates for single-family homes. This is 66 cities with flat rates. The highest was at $61 a month. The lowest was at $550 a month. The average rate for the 66 cities was $28.43. We're kind of like right in the middle there for sewer rates. Sanitation rates, again, it's difficult to compare because it's not just garbage. You know, we have yard waste, we have recycling, there's all these things that go into it. But, you know, City of Lewiston sits at $12.05, City of Clarkson's $13.40. We're kind of, again, right in the middle if you look at the study done by AIC. So, you know, there's some general information.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Davies, I certainly do appreciate this information. I think that will show our citizens in the city of Lewiston that we are not the highest in the state, and the modest increases that we take are very modest and just keep us kind of afloat. Because there will come a time if we don't increase these water and sewer rates, as Mr. Bennett has said, there's going to be a time when a 5% is going to be awful cheap because you're going to be hit with a 20 or 25% increase for the things that we need to accomplish within our systems. Is that right, Mr. Bennett?
What I said was if you don't keep a inflation factor and cost of doing business figured into your rates on a regular basis, and you artificially depress them because you want to keep rates low, which is fine, somewhere down the road, the gap's going to increase to the point where you have no choice but to have a really, really large rate increase in order to get back to where you need to be and to pay for the capital projects that you have to construct.
And we want to try to prevent that. We don't want that happening to the citizens. We don't want a huge water sewer increase. So I certainly do appreciate you taking the time and getting this for us. And you know, if anybody wants a copy of this, I'll be, you know, come to the store, call me, and I'll get you a copy. And you can look it over too. So thanks, I appreciate it. You're welcome. Or can we put this on the website?
We can put this certainly on the Public Works website, and
Okay.
it'll also have the link to the AIC information.
Okay, that'd be great.
We can do that.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions, Councilor Daniel?
I don't have any questions. It's just a couple comments. You know, and I agree this is a good resource, but I try not to base any of my opinions based on other cities. I don't think that's very good governing when you constantly compare things, especially when you're comparing rates. You can't compare two cities. Each city is completely different from the other, how they function, what they do, and why they do it. Same thing with, I think the biggest mistake you see when people do that is with payroll. You have one person comparing a salary to a city in southern Idaho. Well, you can't compare those two. You should pay a person based on what you think they're worth. And the same thing goes with the utility rates, whether that becomes the high average for the state or the low average. It shouldn't matter. We should be doing what's best for our community, and we shouldn't be basing that on what other cities do.
Councilor Stevenson.
Sorry.
Thank you. We just recap? Where are we on this? Have we read this yet?
We haven't read it yet.
Okay.
We've still got a motion to read.
We do have a motion to read?
We have a motion to read.
I would like to amend that motion and that the 3% that's scheduled to be transferred to transportation be dropped.
Motion fails for a lack of a second.
No, he wasn't aware that I
don't know if you were done. I second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to drop. Would you clarify that, Councilor Stevenson?
Yes, the 3% that's to be transferred, let me read how it's phrased here. The increased fee assessed for operational impacts to the street system for the transportation fund, 3% of the 5% increase, and that would be in both the water fee and the wastewater fee, that 3% be removed.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to amend.
And not transferred. There's no transfer to the transportation.
To remove the 3% from the water and wastewater fee and not transfer it to the transportation fund. Any discussion?
Just to clarify, that would make the effective rates for water and sewer for the coming fiscal year a 2% increase.
Okay.
One thing at a time. I'll work on that next.
Okay.
No.
Mr. Mayor?
Pro Tem Cannon.
Then with the balance, it's hot in here. It's time for dinner.
It is.
If that was to take place and that passes, then our budget is not balanced, is that correct?
Correct.
So we'd have to go find another 3% out of the budget, is that correct?
Right, another $240,000.
Another $240,000 has to come out of the budget.
Right.
Any other discussion? Those in favor of the amendment on the floor, raise your hand. Those opposed, raise your hand. Motion fails 3-4. We have a motion on the floor to read Resolution 2012-37. Is there any other discussion by council?
Mr. Mayor?
Pro Tem Cannon.
Just one thing, and to Councilor Daniel, it was just a piece of information I thought was nice that the people of the city of Lewiston would like to have. I totally agree with you that we don't base our budgets or fees from any other organization or any other entity. We do it for what's best for the city of Lewiston. But when you hear those things out there, I certainly want to take the time and just let people know that those are not factual numbers and figures, and that's why I did it. So, but I totally agree with you that we do things that's right for our city and only our city.
And I agree. I think that when we have folks that come up here and spew these figures without facts, I think it's imperative that we need to bring the data that we have to bear to shine a light on that subject and to show where they're in error. So definitely we are not the highest tax rate in Idaho, and we aren't the highest water and sewer rates in Idaho by any means. So. Any other discussion on a motion on the floor to read Resolution 2012-37? Hearing none, those in favor, raise your hand. Those opposed? Motion carries 4-3.
Approving Resolution 2012-37 by title only, a resolution amending water and wastewater fees and charges and providing an effective date.
Resolution 2012-37 has been read. I'll entertain a motion to approve Resolution 2012-37.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve Resolution 2012-37. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor, raise your hand. Those opposed? Motion carries 4-3. Next item of business is vouchers payable. I'll entertain a motion to approve vouchers payable to Han Rental, Han Supply for the amount of $1,464.49, with Councilor Kleberg recusing himself for conflict of interest.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve vouchers payable to Han Rental, Han Supply for $1,464.49. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries 6-0 with Councilor Kleberg abstaining. Next item of business is Normal Hill Zones Ordinance 4588, first and second readings. I'll entertain a motion to read Ordinance 4588 for the first time.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we read Ordinance 4588 for the first time.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to read Ordinance 4588 for the first time. Is there any discussion? Councilor Stevenson.
Because I live in that district, I feel that it's inappropriate for me to be voting on this ordinance, so I would like to respectfully recuse myself.
Okay. Any other discussion? I have a question for council. Is this the one where it has the height requirement?
Yes, it's the section 4 and section 1 on page, I marked it on you.
Is that 4589?
Yes. That's 4589, but it's the,
No, this is the one that defines the Boundaries.
Defines the
4588.
boundary. Okay.
This is just the
This
boundary.
is defining the boundaries.
The other one is
The
the
conditions.
next one up.
Right. Okay.
I got lost in the agreement paper.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, Councilor
if I may,
Kleber.
so we're all clear on this. 4588 defines the boundaries of the two zones.
I thought that.
Did you take mine?
Okay.
4589 is going to define some of the uses by right, conditional uses allowed,
Okay.
structure height.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to read 4588 for the first time. Yeah, I think so. I got my notes in mine. All right. Any other discussion?
There it is.
Hearing none, those in favor of reading ordinance 4588 for the first time, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries 6-0 with Councilor Stevenson abstaining.
Approving the first reading of ordinance 4588 by title only, an ordinance implementing the City Council's decision to establish 2 new Normal Hill zones, declaring that certain real property be removed from the previous zone designations of higher density residential, medium density residential, and low density residential within the boundaries of the new zones and included in the Normal Hill North and South zones, amending the official zoning map of the City of Lewiston, adopting the findings of fact, conclusions of law and decision, and providing an effective date.
Okay, ordinance 4588 has been read for the first time. I'll entertain a motion to read 4588 for the second time.
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to read ordinance 4588 for the second time. Any discussion? Councilor Daniel.
I voted to go ahead and read it the first time. I know it's been done in the past, and it might not be an illegal item, but I think the whole idea of having 3 readings is to give people 3 chances to show up and to voice their opinions during the public comment time. And I don't know. I'm not going to support reading it the second time in the same meeting. I'm just not. And I understand it's not necessarily bad. I just disagree with it.
Any other discussion? Councilor Kleber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Occasionally, I've had a problem with that same thing, Councilor Daniel. In this instance, we've had public hearings upon public hearings going back to not particularly addressing the boundary situation because that was not even the concept at the time, but addressing the zoning of Normal Hill. Public hearings beyond belief. Jamie was our attorney when I was on P&Z. We had many, and a lot of public participation. We had public participation at the last meeting, which was the first public hearing to address concerns and stuff. So that's why I don't have a problem with this particular issue.
Councilor Daniel.
I just think we should be consistent with how we do this process going forward.
Councilor Wortman.
The consistency lies in the fact that we did, in fact, discuss this last week, and the only reason that we have it here for a second reading is that the ordinance is attached to the next one, or the next ordinance, 4589, had some minor amendments. We have essentially had a first reading, or at least a first discussion of this, so it's not a secret, and if anybody had any objections, they would have been here this evening, and I don't think there was anyone here with an objection.
Councilor Daniel.
So why read it a second time? What's the purpose of reading it the second time?
Law.
So, but what the spirit of the law is to read it 3 separate times, not just 3 separate times in the same meeting, 3 separate times, give people the last opportunity if they want to show up. I'm not saying, I know it's going to pass. I have no doubt about that. But it's still the spirit of the law is to give people 3 separate times to show up and voice their concerns, whether it's up or down.
Like call for the question.
Okay. Question's been called for. Those in favor of reading ordinance 4588 for the second time, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries 5. Yes.
The motion was to
read for the second time.
the motion was to call the question, and that's a separate motion. That's just to end debate. We can all agree to end the debate, and then we can all disagree.
Okay. Motion is to call a question. Those in favor of calling the question, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay, motion carries 6-0. To call the question. Those in favor of reading ordinance 4588 for the second time, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries 4-2 with Councilor Stevenson abstaining. Next. Oh, sorry.
Approving the second reading of ordinance 4588 by title only, an ordinance implementing the City Council's decision to establish 2 new formal hill zones, declaring that certain real property be removed from the previous zone designations of higher density residential, medium density residential, and low density residential within the boundaries of the new zones and included in the Normal Hill North and South zones, amending the official zoning map of the City of Lewiston, adopting the findings of fact, conclusions of law, and decision, and providing an effective date.
Thank you. Next item of business is reading ordinance 4589 for the first time. I'll entertain a motion to read ordinance 4589 for the first time.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we read ordinance 4589 for the first time.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to read ordinance 4589 for the first time. Is there any discussion? Councilor Stevenson, with the zoning in this area, do you think that due to conflict of interest you should participate?
No, I would request to be recused.
Recused from this. Okay.
Thank you.
We'll continue that recusal.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other discussion? Councilor Daniel.
You know, I get the intent of this new zoning ordinance. I really do. It's to preserve the physical character of the neighborhood, which I think is important. However, you know, when zoning ordinances like this are just restrictive in nature, especially when they're not just dealing with health and safety or general nuisance items, they're just restrictive in nature. And when that comes up, I'll pretty much always side with people's right to do as they please on their own property. If you don't like it, buy their property. You do not have a right to tell people how to live on their own property, plain and simple. We can set basic health and safety standards. I understand that. I'm supportive of those, but I will not support ordinances like this. And I know, and most of this in here is common sense stuff, but I just won't support it.
For myself, for the most part, I support this. I understand what they're trying to do because the lots in the Normal Hill area have been there for over 100 years. They don't currently conform to what we've defined in our box as a proper zone. And so the only thing that those folks are guilty of is living and maintaining those homes for over 100 years in that property. So for the lot depth and the lot widths and the subdivisions, I'm complete agreement to that. I am. The problem I have is with this, if this ordinance passes, we couldn't build a Lewiston High School there now. Because of height and setbacks. If we pass this, the thing I want to do, because I've learned this lesson once already, is to do no harm to the existing uses that are there. And I think we have a few existing uses. I understand that folks don't want accessory buildings attached to the property, and I completely understand, but I agree with Councilor Daniel on that part, is I think that if that's something that's needed, then they need to get a group together to agree to restrictive covenants and that kind of thing that they can impose on themselves. I understand where they're going with this. The P&Z has done a lot of work, so there's a good part of this I can support. It's the accessory structure sections 37-41.1 and section 37-41.3. I don't agree with the height, and then the accessory structures and accessory apartments. The other, I think I could deal with. And then, again, that they did a good job on non-conforming structures. It's kind of the catch-all, that hopefully we don't do any harm to some of those folks. But the problem is some of the ones, I agree with Councilor Daniel, I have a philosophical issue about putting things more restrictive than what they already are in the zone as far as what you can control on buildings, unless we're converting it to commercial, or if we want to convert it back to R1, and then conform to all the R1 that is the whole city. But, so I think, for the most part, for what they're trying to do for the lot sizes, I completely agree with, but I have an issue with those two items. Councilor Daniel.
So yeah, I'll agree back at you, and I'll just throw in an example. Section 31-41.9. Maximum lot coverage, 60%, including all structures on the lot. So basically, you require. I mean, if you wanted to read it, just plain and simple, you're requiring somebody to have a yard. They can't fill up their lot with a house. But if you require someone to have, I mean, most people are going to want a yard. But let's say if you had somebody who really didn't want a yard, and you force them to have a yard, the unintended consequence of that is going to be they're not going to take care of their yard. I mean,
if they don't have one, it's not a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's still the same point.
If they don't have a yard, there's nothing to take care of.
But this says you can't fill it up.
Failed logic on that one.
I did have a question for Mr. Plaskin. Since he's here, I can put him on the spot.
Did he fall asleep?
He did. Mr. Plaskin?
He's listening.
Minimum lot coverage. Wasn't there an instance where we have a lot of lots because of the size, the small size of the lot, the large size of the structure, it actually exceeded what we currently have in our residential zones? And so that was the reason that 60% was put in there.
That's correct. The issue regarding the lot coverage issue in these two new zoning districts that you're looking at tonight in this ordinance is a matter of increasing the flexibility that the property owners will be able to have in building on their lot. What you're looking at is an increase in the allowable percentage of the lot coverage from 45% to 60%. It's less restrictive than what currently exists in the area.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilor Wortman.
While Joel is there, will you address Councilor Daniel's question? And then also, are there ways with what's written here to address the height issues for the high school and other things?
Councilor Daniels, would you repeat your question then?
No, I actually didn't have a question. I think Gorman's just trying to make me look bad. So I'll just reply to his statement.
I don't need to let you look bad.
No, my point is, yes, it increases flexibility from its current level, 45%, but it's still restrictive in nature. It's still it sets a limit at 60%. That's still limiting your ability. Yeah, maybe more flexible than what we currently have, but it's still restrictive in nature. Plain and simple.
The issue about the height for the high school, I think as the mayor said, that as far as the existing high school goes and the impact to it, that's covered under this proposal in the nonconformity section. I think it's very clear that they would be allowed to retain what they have and even, if necessary, rebuild what they have to the height that they have now. As far as new construction for a new high school, they would be more restricted. Actually, I shouldn't say that. They would be more restricted in height for new construction of the high school. And so they would have to keep it down to the 35 feet, which is basically 3 to 3.5 stories, or they would have to obtain a variance for that.
But they have that option.
Yeah. Correct.
To get a variance.
Correct.
And I don't want to just push Councilor Daniel's comment aside. If somebody wanted to fill a whole lot with a house, can't do it.
Can't do it.
And what we're trying to do in this neighborhood is to make sure that that doesn't happen, because that's part of the issue of what we looked at last week with the house that has the garage, which in terms of modern house designs is perfectly acceptable, and we have that all over the city in other areas, but it's not in that historical district. It's not in keeping with the character of the district. Is that correct?
There's no residential zone that the city has here or anywhere that I've worked that allows complete build out from lot line to lot line.
Councilor Kleber.
And part of that's a result of having some minimum side yard, rear yard, front yard setbacks. You cannot build all the way to the sidewalk, nor could you build all the way to the street because of potential site impacts. Building on the side yard, there's a fence here, there's a little flower bed, here's a house, then all of a sudden somebody comes in, they want us to build their house right to the property line, and you have a 5-foot setback on your side of the house, maybe 10 feet on the other side. You can configure the space for that 60%. You can configure that in many different ways. Those are what setbacks are for, so that you have a level of privacy. You're not looking out of your bedroom window into somebody's bathroom window, right there. So I have no problem, literally I have no problem with anything on this. People talk about property rights and what you can and can't do, and I totally understand that. I mean, I would not want somebody telling me what I can and can't do on my place. What you can't do is turn it into a junkyard, okay? You can't obviously build 100% for every square inch of the lot that you have. You know, it's a 4,000 square foot lot. You're not going to build a 4,000 square foot house on it. Makes absolutely no sense whatsoever, whether you have the money to do it or not. We have zoning. That's what keeps us separate from our friends to the south and to the east. If you want to go and build on your piece of property and cover the whole thing up and do whatever, Idaho County, they're looking for you. So that's my opinion.
Mr. Mayor.
No, Councilor Daniel.
Councilor Daniel.
Well, Councilor Orman was talking about the character of the district. Yeah, you might be talking about the physical character of the district, but the moral character of the district isn't forced conformity. You should be able to do what you want on your own property. Nobody is going to fill up their entire lot with one whole house. I'm not saying that, but this limits it. This does limit it to 60%. I'll bring up another point. Why did we decide on section 37-41.11, the accessory apartments? Why can't it be greater than 600 square feet? If you have the room for it, why not? And now, you know, the common sense thing, most people won't put an accessory apartment that's bigger than 600 square feet, but they should have the option. If they have the room for it, why not?
Copy back.
Councilor Ortman.
I'm sorry, I just want to get my copy back.
Any question?
Mr. Mayor, did Mr. Plaskin's response on the variance for the height satisfy the height discussion you had?
No, I still have a serious concern that if I guess what we'd be doing is forcing the school to get a variance, which would be a non-conforming use in the zone, which brings on a whole nother host of problems where right now, if they decided they wanted to build another high school right next to it on that property, you could. And so that's one of my concerns is that.
Do you have an amendment to, you wish to give up the chair for a moment and offer an amendment?
Looking at it, and I think that 50 feet or maybe even something in there that it can't exceed whatever the existing building height is currently, so that you can at least build a matching height structure. But that's my first concern on this. Councilor Kleber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As Mr. Plaskin stated, the school, if needed, could rebuild a new high school, and if they wanted to exceed the 35 feet, they could do it with a variance. He just explained that to us. All they have to do is apply for and receive a variance. They'd have to go through a public hearing at the Planning and Zoning Commission. So to me, that's not an issue.
Okay. The other is accessory structures, 37-41.1. I have an issue with under Section A, Sentence 2, that location that says garages must not be in front or project beyond the front wall of the house unless it has these. And I don't know, I'm with Councilor Daniel there that neighborhood's been there 100 years, and sure, some neighbors aren't going to appreciate the outbuilding that you build, but you're not going to make everybody happy, but you're the owner of that property. And I think that to tell them what kind of accessory structure they can and can't build in there without some CCRs or some neighborhood action, I've got some concerns. Councilor Kleber.
Well, if you look at sub-item C.
Could you give us a page number, Councilor?
Oh, I'm
Page
sorry, I'm
4.
on page 8. Detached accessory structures and attached garages must not be in front of or project beyond front wall of house unless, and if you go down to C, the lot is less than 50 feet in width and there is no abutting alley, or 50% of the house is constructed within the rear half of the depth of the lot and there is no abutting alley. There's certainly an avenue for somebody to build a garage in front of their house.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I'm on to
Councilor Shropshire, or City Attorney Shropshire. It's a late night. Yes, City Attorney.
Your question regarding the height that's allowable, does it just have to do with public buildings? It might be worth our time to look at whether or not the high school is actually zoned R2, R3, or R4, which I doubt that it is. I think it's a public zone, in which case this ordinance doesn't have anything to do with them.
No, I checked with Mr. Plaskon. The high school is in a residential zone.
But if your intent is to affect public buildings within the zone, then maybe that's a provision that you want to make, as opposed to all heights.
I think this ordinance right now applies to any building within this zone.
It applies to anything that's presently zoned R2, R3, or R4.
So the school is an outright use in that zone?
I don't know. I don't have a map in front of me. I was just trying to see if I could pull one up on the city website to determine what the actual zoning is.
I'll refresh your memory. Uses by right, Normal Hill North Zone. School or preschool, subject to the special conditions. Park, blah, blah, blah. Schools are clearly allowed.
So it's just mainly the building heights, it would still be restricting it?
Which could be accomplished with the variance.
Okay.
Which going more than 3 stories, I'd venture to think that wouldn't take place.
Okay.
In today's world.
Not deemed efficient.
Yeah.
It'll cost too much to go up that many stories.
Vertical costs you a lot more than horizontal.
Absolutely.
Then I think it's also, the only other point I had was concern is also under 37-41.1. Section C, I'm looking at page 4. Where item 4 is detached accessory structures shall be limited to 16 feet in height or the height of the house, whichever is greater. And I could be comfortable with that if that was changed to limited to the height of the house.
Mr. Mayor, I believe last week it was discussed about some of the homes there that are 41, 42 feet tall. And having an accessory building 41, 42 foot tall might look a little goofy, right? Pretty close to what, you didn't say goofy, but pretty close to what you... Inappropriate. Inappropriate, thanks, that's a good word. Inappropriate. So you're not giving those individuals the opportunity to build a 41-foot tall garage that might obstruct a lot of view or it might be very offensive to the neighbors. So I think that's why we talked about the height limitation to being, 16 feet? A single story or 26 feet in height for a second story, which I think would be ample for a shop or a garage.
And again, I guess that's where I go to, yeah, it might be offensive to the neighbors, but they don't own the property and aren't paying the property tax on that property. Then I think it's an ownership right that they've gone along fine for 100 years now. Why is this a big deal? That's my concern. Not to say that the Prospect Avenue and a lot of those historical homes along there are some of our best treasure. It's just how do we preserve that and not lose them and lose the integrity of the neighborhood? And I guess that's what I'm struggling with tonight.
But this isn't suggesting anybody's going to go in and knock something down, Mr. Mayor.
True.
So all of this is talking about new construction, right?
Yep, new construction.
So new construction is exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
It's preserving the neighborhood at the height that it is, right? Isn't it?
Okay. If somebody wanted to build an accessory structure or something there on their property, I don't think we should restrict them any more than what we have in some of the other zones. Given the fact that we do have smaller lot sizes and things there, that's just my concern. And yes, any other discussion?
I have a
Pro
question.
Tem Cannon.
Joel, I live up in the Orchards. Am I restricted on building height as far as a secondary structure or a garage or a shop area?
Yes, to hopefully add a little bit of clarification to the issue on the height of the detached accessory structures, the proposed ordinance, the proposed zoning that you're looking at tonight allows a taller detached accessory building than what you can currently have in terms of the second-story accessory apartment, which you can't even have that in the Orchards. But yeah, right now the height limit in the Orchards for detached accessory buildings is a standard at 16 feet as measured to the midpoint of the roof. You can increase that height by 1 foot for each additional 6 inches of side and rear yard setback that you provide.
So I cannot build if my house was 41 foot, I can't build a 41 foot in the Orchards.
Not unless your property's big enough to set it back an additional.
Which would be huge.
In the middle of the lot.
2 acres, you could do it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other discussion on reading ordinance 4589 for the first time? Hearing none. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those
Aye.
opposed, same sign. Yes.
Point of
Councilor
clarification,
Cleveland.
this is second reading, right?
Second reading. Excuse me. Ordinance
4589. Yep.
89.
89, not one.
4589 for the second time? We've already read it once? No, I didn't think so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I haven't marked off my R1 here.
My mistake, apologies.
So,
But we're actually on 4589.
4589 for the second time. That's correct. We've read
First time.
or for the first time. Now you got me confused. We've read ordinance 4588 twice, and so now we're doing the 4589 for the
First time.
code provisions for the new zoning districts we formed. So, any other discussion on reading 4589 for the first time? Those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed, same sign.
Nay.
Aye. So motion carries 4-2 with Councilor Stevenson abstaining.
Approving the first reading of ordinance 4589 by title only. An ordinance enacting new sections of the Lewiston City Code to be codified as Lewiston City Code Section 37-41 and 37-41A, providing for two new zoning districts to be known as Normal Hill North and Normal Hill South, providing for outright and conditional uses, providing for lot size, setback, height, access, and other developmental standards, providing for special notification procedures, and providing an effective date.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to read 4589 for the second time.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we read ordinance 4589 for the second time.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to read ordinance 4589 for the second time. Is there any discussion from council? Hearing none, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign.
Nay.
Aye. Motion carries 4-2.
Approving the second reading of ordinance 4589 by title only, an ordinance enacting new sections of the Lewiston City Code to be codified as Lewiston City Code, Section 37-41 and 37-41A, providing for 2 new zoning districts to be known as Normal Hill North and Normal Hill South, providing for outright and conditional uses, providing for lot size, setback, height, access, and other developmental standards, providing for special notification procedures, and providing an effective date.
Okay. So next week we'll have the third reading and possible adoption coming to us then. That concludes our business for the active agenda. We'll move on to unfinished and new business. First item of business is city councilor comments. Is there any this evening? Councilor Randall.
I just wanted to clarify why I felt the transfer money from the sanitation fund to the library fund was considered a debt, and one of their taking from, taking from February 27th, 2012 City Council regular meeting minutes on page 12 of those minutes, regarding comments made about naming the sanitation fund a slush fund. Mayor Poole explained enterprise funds are for a dedicated purpose, but can be loaned under narrow conditions to other funds as long as they are paid back with interest. Now, the part, not necessarily the loan principal, but the interest is what I'm considering the debt. Mm-hmm. And that's where I come from. It's not just a transfer, it's an actual debt.
Okay. Mr. Mayor. Councilor Orton.
We had one of the most exciting events in the 151 years of Lewiston's existence, starting on April 14th with a large gathering of people across from City Hall in the building of the replica of the Idaho Territorial Capitol, which in and of itself has a historical line that is long. I've had a chance to read some of the articles in the Lewiston Tribune. There was a group in 1992 that worked really hard and failed and didn't get that done. And I have to tell you that in watching that go up the last week, the success of that is not the fact that it's happening. It's not the fact that it's going to sit there for a long time. It's not the fact that we have lots of kids who are going to come to it, legislators who will be looking at it. The success of that is it is truly a partnership, and I don't think it's one that even Councilor Kleberg would worry about very much. It's a healthy partnership, and I want to really underscore that the contractors who have been involved, who have given of their time and their energy, did so in a non-relaxed way. They were in there to accomplish a task, and they did so with great zeal. That isn't happening without lots of contributions from other people, people who are providing services, providing equipment. The list is long, and it really is a community project. I would invite everybody to go down to F Street and in between Main and F and take a look. There's no F given to this project. This is an A+ project. Take a look at the roofing that was done today. This is the kind of thing that shows the real character of a community. It's not just 10 or 15 naysayers who get us riled from time to time, but it's hundreds of people who rile us to a positive point that says we have something to be proud of. I'm proud of the contractors. I'm proud of the equipment companies. I'm proud of what I've seen donated on the part of many people. Yes, I am the treasurer for the group, and I'm obviously looking for another $20,000. But I can tell you this, we've got enough money to build that structure. We'll get it done. The city has been tremendous in its cooperation. I can't underscore enough what Tim Barker and Jim Bennett and others have done. We could go make a long list of people who deserve some credit for something that I think is going to be very unique. We are one of the last states that has a possibility to do this. Now, a lot of other states can't even put their territorial capital close to where it was originally located, because their original capitals were torn down to build the marble structures that are monuments to money and to egos. This is not a monument to money and egos, I can tell you. Government took place in this structure, and it's not what you would call an opulent structure, not even for the time. If you look at the photo from 1862, this is an ordinary building that underscores the fact that we have built a nation of people who are doing things for other people. It is a nation of the people. And we can underscore that in the event that's there. When I look around this room, I know that the counselors have been present, the department heads have been universally present. There has not been anybody involved with the city who has any decision-making qualities whatsoever who hasn't backed this project. I appreciate all of you who were there wearing hard hats. I appreciate all of you who have hard enough heads that you don't need the hard hats. But nonetheless, the total group needs to be congratulated, and I'm most excited. I'm a contractor's son, and I watch contractors work for the last, well, ever since I can remember, my entire life. I'm going to be 65 here in a couple of weeks, and I can tell you that the attitude, latitude, and gratitude that was displayed there was first class, and will continue to be. A week from Monday, there will be, or a week from yesterday, there will be a need for volunteers. There have been lots of people signed up. That doesn't mean that there isn't activity going on right now. The roofing will be finished. Obviously, the walls have to be sealed, but there will, because of hot August nights and because of the activities there will be a 1 or 2 day recess. But we invite people to come forward starting the following Monday on the 27th, and we're going to see if we can get that project done in a few weeks. The windows are special order, they're special size. The only thing that's actually changed in there is that the one entrance is handicap accessible, which is a requirement that we have met. There's lots of opportunity for people to put their own mark on this building and to pound one of those square nails and to become a part of history. Thank you.
Okay. Tim Cannon, would you like to make a comment on that?
Well, the only problem I had with the whole day was the city attorney kept telling me to put my hard hat on. You know, when I got those contractors together, who was Brett Blewett Construction, Space Builders, and K&G Construction, there were a few others who said they'd be there and then couldn't make it at the last minute. But I told them we're under a schedule. We went Wednesday morning and put the floor down. A few of K&G Construction's employees, myself, and an employee of mine, and went down and set the floor and got the deck on. And I said, I got trusses coming at 9:30, guys. So we got 4 walls to build, and that front wall was the toughest because it's 20 foot tall and 20 foot wide. So we gathered at 6 o'clock for our meeting. Started at 7. Somebody will dispute that, but that's okay. And got the first wall up, and the truss truck showed up, and if we weren't down for about 15 minutes because we maybe blew a breaker in Costello and Combs building there, we had to go get a generator, and so we're down 15 minutes, but we started setting the first truss at 9:45. So I think Bill Miller was amazed. He didn't think that would ever happen. But I'll tell you, when you got guys like that who are actually competitors but come together and work together for a cause, it really shows you the community spirit, as Dr. Ortman has said. And I was just really proud to be a part of it. I know John Mock and his wife kind of sat over there with tears in their eyes, seeing that this thing's finally getting built and for the sesquicentennial of the state of Idaho. So we're doing the best we can to keep it to period and how it looked. Although some of the siding is going to look a little nicer than what the siding is on the picture of the building, but you know, they've done just a great job, and I was just glad to be a part of it, and we'll continue on and hopefully get the thing ready to go in the next couple of weeks. So it was a lot of fun. We had a great time. Barbecued some hamburgers and hot dogs. The city attorney did that. She had her hard hat on to do that, by the way. if I have to wear one, she's going to wear one too. So, but it was a lot of fun, and a lot of people stopped by to see how it was going, and we got done about 2:30 in the afternoon, and we were hot and we were tired, but it's built. So,
Mr. Mayor, just as a follow-up to that before any other comments, there are a long list of people who have made it happen. But I sent a simple letter to John and Melva Mock, and it had just a couple of words in it. And I think we can underscore those. The words were simply, John and Melva, you did it.
And I did get ribbed a lot because my nail belt didn't come together anymore.
I never
they
tried
said
to
I
put
just
one
went
on.
and got everything off the shelf with new tools and still had the price tags on it. When I was done, I was going to put it all back on the shelf and sell it. But I did have that nail belt for a while, so I'm dragging it.
You have a used nail bit.
I'm dragging it behind my truck for a couple of days, so it'll look really worn. So.
I think maybe if I do have one request. Possibly you could put a cot and a cooler in there in case the governor's going to be in town Wednesday and he may need a place to stay. He could stay in the replica one night.
$95 a night, not a problem.
We can work it. The other thing we participated in last Thursday was we went to the Nez Perce tribe. They were kind enough to grace us with a donation of. Councilor Ortman, since you're involved with the library, why don't you fill in the blanks for me?
Well, there are a lot of blanks that could be filled in this week. We've had some great generosity in the city of Lewiston. We had one individual who wrote a $35,000 check. We have the tribe, as you've mentioned, who has given us $25,000, and I was encouraged by the comments of Chairman Silas Whitman, who said that they have every intention of having a goal that includes repeating that, and Councilor Stevenson that was there with us. I think we had a great time with that group. It is giving money back to the communities, not just Lapwai, but all of the surrounding communities. That was done with a great spirit of cooperation. Once again, a good partner. In a place where they didn't even really need to do that, but we asked them for the money and they saw the benefit of it. And I guess I was particularly thrilled personally because over 42 years of instruction, 40 of them here in Lewiston, the number of Nez Perce students that I've had have always really been a group that I have grown to admire and love from when I taught at the college and also at the high school. They are sincere about this being a land that we need to preserve and that we need to take care of. And part of that will be taking care of their history in that structure. And that's something that we will challenge Alexa and her group to do so that they have a place in that building that is, in fact, recognizes their contributions. And we're thrilled.
That's exciting. Okay. Any other councilor comments this evening? Mr. Bennett, any comments this evening?
Just one. I certainly agree with Councilor Cannon and Councilor Ortman about what a great day that was to see the sesquicentennial memorialized by the construction of the new Capitol. But I was also struck by that at the same time that that building was going up, another building was coming down. The Thompson Auto Sales building was demolished that same day, parking lot dug up in preparation for the construction of the new Harley-Davidson dealership at that location. And I think it's going to look terrific when it's done, and what a really nice focal point that will be for folks coming into the community.
Advisory Board and Commission appointments. Councilor Daniel.
I reviewed two of the applications. I haven't had a chance to get in touch with either of them. I'll have a recommendation at their next meeting for the Parks and Rec.
Okay. Thank you. Who are your other people on your committee?
Councilor Kleberg and Farrah Stevenson.
The Code Board of Appeals is down one member with resignation of Wes McFarland and McCoy. Wes McCoy. They have an application from Sean Turpin. He's a professional engineer, works for a engineering firm here in town, All West Testing. He's a geotech engineer. Has shown some interest, and I talked with John Smith, and he said it would be great if they could get up to full complement of members again, since Mr. Turpin's the only one that's applied since the resignation. So I'd entertain a motion to approve the appointment of Sean Turpin to the Code Board of Appeals.
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Second?
Okay, it's been moved and second to appoint Sean Turpin to the Code Board of Appeals. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries 7-0. The board appointment recommendation stands. Any other board and commission appointments? Work session agenda topics. Any additional ones this?
Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Wortman.
I would like to have a placeholder in our structure to discuss the EMS task force. I'm not sure what the date will be, but be aware that we need to do that at some point.
Did you say that would be a work session in October or November or?
September, October, I hope, right?
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I've also been asked to give a report to the council on the domestic violence cases. I'd be happy to do that at a work session.
Okay, thank you. Any other work session agenda topics? Seeing none, this meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everyone.